long as we have a democracy, we do have a chance to have course correction. But it will take a long time for the people of Ukraine and the people of Europe, who are now have gone from providing 50% of the assistance to Ukraine to 90%. It will take a very long time for them to forget.
Thank you for listening to The Interview. For more compelling conversations, search for The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts. You'll find episodes from the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and Volodymyr Zelensky, the President of Ukraine, plus many, many others. But until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview. I'm Saroja.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live with our team in Studio 15 in downtown Winnipeg on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Let's say hello to that team, and then we'll plug into the day here. Mr. Darren Marash. Why don't we start with Darren? Darren's our producer of our YouTube stream. Please say hello if you're watching the show live there. Mr. Abby Adiyemi, also in the control room. Abby will cover weather on the air. He's also our senior tech in the show. And Mr. Corey Funk is back today, so the whole band's back together. Corey is our regular studio director, and he's here again today. He'll cover your commute also. Weather-wise, let's have a look at Winnipeg for this Tuesday, March the 10th. We're going to have sunshine today. We do have a 30% chance we'll have a little light snow and a high of -4. Our temperature with wind chill will feel more like -26 this morning, about -10 this afternoon. So spring-like day, although below normal conditions as we've had. Below normal temperatures, I should say. I have to say, though, yesterday that sun sure helped it still feel like spring, so that was nice in Winnipeg. In Brandon, sunny as well, a high -3. And then up north in Manitoba, if that's where your home is, Thompson expecting a high of -13. And if you're into Dooley Lake, still cold, folks, with wind chill feels like -45 and -50. So that cold warning continues for that area of Manitoba. All right, let's plug into news headlines and some stories that are developing. Heather Wells joins us as always to start the morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the conflict in Iran is driving up the cost of fertilizer for Manitoba farmers. Shipments of nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur, key ingredients for fertilizer, aren't getting through the Strait of Hormuz. Stuart Persson at MNP says fertilizer and fuel prices are under significant pressure and predicts a tough year for producers. 2 northern communities are working on new pool projects for fun, learning, and safety. Thompson and Flin Flon are building new pools, facilities to host competition, recreation, and swimming lessons. Both communities are surrounded by lakes and water, so learning to swim is vital. We'll hear more about their projects coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather's also, of course, with us throughout the morning. And all news anytime developing on cbc.ca/Manitoba. In the first hour of the show, we'll have a closer look at Cuba and what Donald Trump has been saying about Cuba moving forward. Right now, though, let's plug into more national and international news on World Report.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. Ira Parker started out making student films in his dad's warehouse in St. Catharines, Ontario. Now he's leading the charge in the hit Game of Thrones prequel, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. He'll talk about his journey to Hollywood and then some.
You just want to make it as good as you can possibly do.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Idil Musa. Footage released by the United States military show Tomahawk missiles being launched towards Iran. Both the U.S. and Iran say they will be the ones to determine when this war ends. Iran says it will not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region if U.S. and Israeli attacks continue. U.S. President Donald Trump says if that happens, Iran will be hit 20 times harder. The CBC's David Common joins me now from Amman, Jordan. David, what more can you tell us?
Ithel, one key question throughout this conflict is what needs to happen to end it. President Trump has offered the first hint on timing, saying it could be over soon, though not this week. He says The aims are mostly complete. As he said that, oil prices came down, though not back to where they were before the war. So that may have been the point for Trump, to try to drive those oil prices down. So it is hard to say exactly when this might end, even with these hints. Iran has a new supreme leader, very much in the image of the last, his father, who was deemed intolerable by both the U.S. and Israel. The regime seems very intent on keeping up not only its practices, but its retaliation. Iran was bombed massively last night, especially in the capital. Some residents describing huge white flashes that were seen repeatedly. It's clear many hundreds have died in Iran, but getting an accurate picture is tough. Finally, I would note President Trump continues to claim Iran may have been the one bombing that girls' school, killing 168. There is quite a bit of evidence that suggests otherwise, and now video of a Tomahawk missile striking the school compound. Tomahawk missiles are not used by Iran or Israel.
David, what is happening on the Israel-Hezbollah front?
Israel continues to pound Beirut in particular. Flights, though, continuing to take off from the main airport there, with passengers often looking out a window and seeing huge clouds of smoke and dust. More than 700,000 people, mostly from Beirut, have fled their homes, according to the UN, many of them hoping this front for Israel will soon end. Meanwhile, Syria accusing Hezbollah of firing into its territory overnight as well.
The CBC's David Common in Amman, Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, here at home, the war in Iran is sowing division in Canada's parliament. In last night's debate, the Liberal government called for de-escalation in the ongoing crisis. The Conservatives, however, accused the government of not taking a clear position. The CBC's David Thurton reports.
Can the minister explain this mumbo-jumbo of foreign policy?
Conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chomp calling for clarity as the Liberal government's position on the Iran conflict evolves.
Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand avoiding the Prime Minister's initial comments, where he said that Canada supports the U.S.'s actions. She did call for the respect of international law while saying Canada is staying out of the war.
Prime Minister has been clear. Canada was not consulted. Canada did not participate, and Canada has no plans to participate.
Conservatives press further. Defense critic James Bazan asking the National Defense Minister,
can he guarantee that there will be a vote in this House if the government decides to deploy Canadian Armed Forces members and our kit in support of the operations against the Iranian regime?
David McGuinty did not commit to such a vote. He did say Canada may have another non-combat role.
And I think we should be assisting neighboring states, if it's requested, with civil matters, water systems, desalination plants, electricity, and other challenges.
He added, the government is focused on working with like-minded parties to de-escalate a war that he says appears to be spiraling out of control. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Toronto police say officers are on the scene of the U.S. consulate. They say someone discharged a firearm there. At this time, there are no suspects and no reports of injuries. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. Despite international sanctions, a Canadian-led firm funneled pearls to Myanmar's military junta after the 2021 coup. A CBC investigation has determined the RCMP was asked to look at the activities of Belle Pearl almost 2 years ago, but authorities won't say whether they have taken up the case. The CBC's Murray Brewster has been working with our Visual Investigations Unit, and he brings us this exclusive story.
Wow!
Vendors taking an up-close look at how a pearl farm operates. The harvest of pearls in South Asia is huge business, worth tens of millions of dollars a year, especially Burmese or Myanmar golden pearls. CBC News has learned a company with Canadian directors has operated a pearl farm in Myanmar together with a state-owned enterprise, an agency with direct ties to the country's murderous military regime. Documents show Belle Pearl operates through a network of related entities registered in Toronto, Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and Myanmar. The regime in Myanmar has waged a civil war since 2021 and has been accused of committing brutal atrocities, killing thousands. The state-run entity that Belle Pearl Myanmar has been dealing with is under sanction by Canada and its allies.
Myanmar pearls are really funding this military junta.
William Pellerin, an Ottawa-based lawyer representing the human rights group Justice for Myanmar, presented the RCMP with documents alleging the involvement of Marie Hajar and Pierre Hajar in Bell Pearl's Myanmar operation almost 2 years ago.
So I think the Government of Canada has an obligation to uphold the law.
The Hajars did not respond to repeated CBC News requests for comment. The company, Bell Pearl, denies it has violated sanctions, but also says its Canadian directors have now stepped down. The RCMP says it does not confirm or deny investigations until charges are laid. Marie Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Authorities in New Mexico say state investigators have begun searching a ranch formerly owned by Jeffrey Epstein. There are allegations the property may have been used for sexual abuse and the trafficking of young women. Before her death, Virginia Giuffre said she was sexually abused there. Sky Roberts is her brother.
Virginia was one of the most prominent and outspoken survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other perpetrators out there that are still walking free today.
Epstein never faced charges in New Mexico, but state prosecutors say there were revelations in previously sealed files that warrant closer examination. TikTok and the Canadian government are forging a new relationship. They have reached an agreement that will allow the Chinese-owned social media giant to continue its Canadian operations. In exchange, TikTok has agreed to enhance security measures, including forming a security barrier around Canadian user data. It will allow a third party to monitor its data controls, and the company says it will continue to support Canadian content creators. Members of the Canadian military are in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, conducting Operation Nanook. It's an annual exercise showcasing their abilities to defend the North. This year's operation comes at a time when Canada is looking to heavily invest in Arctic security. Saloni Bugra reports.
On a regular winter day, Cambridge Bay, a remote hamlet of about 1,200 people in the north of Nunavut, is peaceful. For the past few weeks, though, residents are hearing snowmobiles hauling military equipment and Air Force drills overhead.
It's scary.
Emily Angulalik is an Inuit elder and the executive director of the local cultural center.
I'm grateful that they're here to protect, and at the same time, I'm fearful. Are we that close to the war?
It's the first time the Canadian Armed Forces have taken Operation Nanook to Cambridge Bay in winter since 2007. It all coincides with Canada ramping up defense investments in the Arctic due to geopolitical changes, like China's growing ambition in the Arctic, the push to develop critical minerals in the north, and U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to Greenland and Canada's sovereignty. Wayne Gregory is the mayor of the hamlet.
A lot of the community members feel a little anxiety with a lot of the talks because we are the main hub and we're the center of the Northwest Passage.
Sean French is the Joint Forces commander for Operation Nanook.
The Armed Forces is putting increased effort into making sure that Canada's Arctic and our northern people are safe, secure.
Last week in Ottawa, Canada urged NATO to pivot its policy to the Arctic. Gregory said he hopes Ottawa's planned spending will offset some of the residents' concerns.
Paved runway, hangars.
Saloni Pugra, CBC News, Cambridge Bay.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Very cold in northern Manitoba today once again. And actually, it will feel a bit like spring, although a coolish spring day here in the south. I'm with our team at Information Radio. Thanks for joining all of us. We're going to hear from the team in a moment. This hour on the show, we're also going to hear from some guests who are going to talk about what's happening with Cuba. Donald Trump continues to set his sights on the island nation, but what is the next move? We're going to talk about that coming up in some detail. You might have heard some of the stories on World Report to set us up. In addition, punk rock and bagpipes. Coming up, we're going to meet a Winnipeg bagpiper who's going back to his roots to celebrate St. Patrick's Day this weekend, so a bit of a fun story out of Winnipeg coming up. And then at 10 to 7, last night MPs debated Canada's policy on the Middle East. A political reporter with the Toronto Star is going to walk us through exactly what was said and what Canada's role might be moving forward. What came out of that meeting concretely, we'll find out. That's just ahead of 7 o'clock. Right now, let's find out what's developing in Manitoba. Heather Wells is here with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a 96-year-old Steinbach woman has been told she is too healthy for an assisted death. Marion Penner is bedridden in hospital with chronic diseases and a broken pelvis. She says she has no prospect of her condition improving and relies on painkillers. And she's not the only one who has applied for Maid but was denied. According to November's annual federal report on Maid, Manitoba has by far the highest ratio of denied requests in Canada at 32%. We're going to hear more on that story. As well, the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is increasing the cost of fertilizer. The conflict is blocking the Strait of Hormuz, so key exports like ingredients for fertilizer can't get through. A farmer in Poplar Point says the longer the supply chain is disrupted, the greater the risks for farmers. More on that as well in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into the weather forecast here. Abby Adiemi, good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. It's going to be a crisp and sunny Tuesday across the province, but that biting cold still gripping the northern parts of the province. Hence, the extreme yellow warning still in effect for Tudula Lake and around Brochet this morning. So we're tracking wind chills in the values of minus 45s to minus 50s this morning, and actual temperature around Tudula Lake this morning, we're looking at minus 40 there already. Just the actual temperature, the wind chill factored in, it's going to feel colder than that with similar conditions returning. Yeah, that's just the actual temperature, and it's going to feel colder than that.
You know what? You can hear me scoffing off mic here. That's because I was just in Vancouver, as I was sharing yesterday on the air.
The blossoms.
I told them, well, the blossoms are gorgeous, but I told them about Tuduli. I'm like, you know what? Tuduli Lake is like for real, minus 40. And then there was one day it was with wind chill minus 57.
Yeah.
And there were people that thought I was joking. They're like, no, come on now. I'm like, yeah, it's true, man.
So
Come to Manitoba.
if you're listening on a shortwave radio somewhere, there's a place in Manitoba that's actually minus 40 at this time. And the wind chill is in the values of minus 51 already this morning. It's going to, we get a relief for that part of the province, but it's going to return again tonight. So frostbite and exposed skin in minutes. I'm talking about less than 3-4 minutes, so you need to take it easy. But for the southern region, we will be seeing more like clear, more like formal, not too much of concerns this morning, but the wind chill, you're still going to feel it in the southern regions, close to minus 26, 27. For Winnipeg right now, we're hovering near minus 17 at this time. Most of the regions around Winnipeg, we're seeing minus 16s, minus 17 with breezy conditions coming from the south. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today, but thick clouds move in the afternoon. There's a slim chance of light snow, and we get to a high close to the seasonal. This time of the year, we're usually around minus 2, but we get to minus 4 today, and temperatures will just hover around minus 10 all morning before we get there. But look out for that wind chill. It's still going to be playing a big role this morning. It feels like minus 26, 27 in the southern part of the province.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk returns. How you doing?
Good, doing good. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's cold again.
Yeah, I know. How was the commute?
Not bad. It's the run-in was lovely, but haven't heard of any other major issues out there. If you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, how's that to wake you up? Formed in 1992 in Winnipeg, Canadian Celtic band The Real Mackenzies. We're listening to some of their rockin' bagpipes from specifically Winnipeg Piper and former member of that band, Gord Taylor. He's on a creative quest right now with the bagpipes. He's got a new album out. It's called Maid in Hell. He's got a new modern take on bagpipes, and he spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday and Up to Speed all about it and some upcoming shows in Winnipeg. They asked him why he decided to go beyond traditional Celtic sounds on this project.
I got a taste of that in the Real Mackenzies, and there was a big cultural connection in the Mackenzies. We'd come on stage in kilts and regalia and really dig from the well of traditional Scottish tunes, which sounded excellent when they came out through Marshall amplifiers like Old Lang Syne and My Bonnie Lives Over the Ocean. And I think the differentiation I've been trying to do since I left the band was to not use that gimmick, to not put the kilt on, and to just, the bagpipes are my first instrument, and there's lots of music to be played with it. I enjoy being from this country. I used to be a trucker. I've gone from coast to coast. I've seen all kinds of wonderful people and wonderful shows all over the world. And I don't know. I don't think there necessarily has to be a Scottish gimmick to playing bagpipes and aggressive or acoustic music, whatever kind of music. It's just my primary instrument, and that's sort of the quest that I've been on, was just to try to make it normal. I've had a lot of help though.
Yeah, I mean, you attribute your beginnings to Winnipeg band the Dust Rhinos.
Absolutely.
What's their connection? What's your connection with them?
When I was a kid, I had a best friend. I still have a best friend named Matt, and we were about 13 when we would both be in kilts. I think Matt was playing with the cadet band at the time, the Army band, and I was playing with the Lord Selkirk Boy Scout pipe band. And we'd see each other at competitions. We became fast friends. Matt was into busking on the street. And in Winnipeg in the 90s, I won't mention any bar names because some of them are still around, but we discovered that if you show up in a kilt with your bagpipes, then the bar probably wouldn't ask how old you were, especially if you said you're a musician for the night. And Blair McAvoy, the singer from the Dust Rhinos, and his troupe were kind enough to allow us to jump on stage for a handful of sets. We were never an integral part of the show. If I remember right, it was a pre-encore set that we would do to give them a chance to get refreshed or change a guitar string or whatever. And that's sort of how it started. And their band started in 1992, and I reckon Matt and I were going to the pub and playing with them in about 1994. And coincidentally, the Real Mackenzies also started in 1992. So that's the connection to the Dust Rhinos. They were the first taste of limelight that Matt and I both, and incidentally, Matt was the piper for the Mackenzies before I was, and then at the same time as I was, then I sort of carried on after he left. So Winnipeg's got two pipers. It started with a great Winnipeg band and then went on to play with a great Vancouver band and tour the world and earn bronze records from Fat Records in San Francisco, 100,000 copies sold, and come back to Winnipeg.
I mean, what's it like playing bagpipes in a punk band? I mean, with my limited knowledge of bagpipes, punk is not the next word that comes to mind when I think of a mixture of music, right? What's it like playing bagpipes in a punk band?
I think it's more honest than other forms of music.
What do you mean?
I think anything can happen on that stage, and punk rockers, I think, above anybody, know the worst things that can happen or the best things, that the show can utterly fall apart, and you just keep on trucking, keep on doing your thing. There were some of the strangest experiences I think I've ever had in any band. I remember playing naked on stage in East Germany. I think it was in a town called Chemnitz. And let me tell you, the guitar players are lucky. They get to have a guitar in front of them, us bagpipers and the lead singer. That's just how it was.
I have to say though, when you play the pipes, it's hard not to be dishonest because you hear every single wrong thing, right?
I like to say it's a instrument that's really easy to play badly.
You're celebrating St. Paddy's Day with the Dust Rhinos. What's it like performing with them again all these years later?
Well, I think I got a special place in my heart because my best friend Matt is coming back to town. I think he's driving in on Thursday, and this will be the first time that we're both on Osborne Street since we were 14, 15. He left town when he was 18, and he would have joined the Mackenzies around 19 or 20. I was working for them in the background, but didn't go on tour with Matt until I was about 30. So to me, it's a tear in my eye to have us both in town again, but it's a tear in the other eye to go back and play with Blair and the Dust Rhinos again, right where it all started. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and I'm beside myself with excitement.
So you won't be wearing a kilt. Will you be wearing any kind of tartan?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I have a feeling it'll be a pair of chucks on my feet, black jeans on my legs, and a blank white T-shirt on top. Don't ask me what I'm wearing under my jeans. I won't ask you.
Kind of glad he didn't ask. Gord Taylor there in conversation with CBC's Faith Fundal. Gord Taylor is a former member of the Real Mackenzies, formed in Vancouver, but as you heard, deep Winnipeg roots. He'll play with the Dust Rhinos at the St. Paddy's Day party on Sunday, March 15th. If you want to check it out, it's going down at the West End Cultural Centre. And before we get there, we thought we'd hear a little bit of the Real Mackenzies, a tune Gord worked on. This is The Tempest on 89.3.
We are all born free, but forever live in chains, and we battle to existence on and on. We'll take whatever comes to be while keeping hopeful melody, and we'll cruise through the darkness until the warmth of dawn. So roll, roll your bastards, you never can tell, through water like glass, above a briny hell. So roll and holler, come give her all you can, or the sea she will best us, we'll never see the land. We carry on the burden and we hide our grimace well, for the day will come for us to mutiny. But as long as we survive, our hope and pride they can't deprive, and we'll carry on our melody to sing in harmony. So roll, roll your bastards, you never can tell, over water like glass, above a briny hell. So roll and holler, come give her all you can, or the sea she will best us, we'll never see the land.
Man, every time I hear a tune like this, I'm seeing myself in Halifax on the East Coast when I was in my 20s, sitting in a kind of a dark table, like dark area, watching comedy, listening to bands with these long wood tables and people just banging big jugs full of beer on the table. It's going to be fun on Sunday night. I suspect the vibes are going to be similar over at the West End Cultural Centre, though you might be standing and dancing as you're watching the Real Mackenzies, Gord Taylor, who's going to be playing with the Dust Rhinos. So that's the St. Patrick's Day show if you want to check it out on Sunday, the 15th of March at the West End Cultural Centre. Pretty cool. 6:23 a.m. is the time right now. You're welcome for waking up with some bagpipes. Minus 16 is the temperature currently in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy. We're going to have lots of sunshine today. Well, next, let's turn our attention back to serious matters and international news. Over the weekend at the Shield of America Summit, U.S. President Donald Trump said this about Cuba.
Cuba's at the end of the line. They have no money. They have no oil. They have a bad philosophy. They have a bad regime that's been bad for a long time. And they used to get the money from Venezuela. They get the oil from Venezuela. But they don't have any money from Venezuela. They don't have any oil. They don't have anything.
Trump said the country could be facing major changes soon, but he did not elaborate. To look at what this could mean, Jean-Francois Mayer is with us, Associate Professor of Political Science at Concordia University. He's in Montreal. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What do we think he's hinting at?
Well, that is certainly a good question. What we believe he's hinting at, President Trump is hinting at, is probably a change that would be similar to what we've witnessed in Venezuela in early January. So the replacement of the head of in the case of Cuba, of the communist-inspired regime that is in place, communist-inspired government rather, that's in place, and the replacement of that. So replacement of President Diaz-Canel and perhaps some close collaborators, their replacement by people who may already be part of that government or who are close collaborators without official titles right now, but who are close to the Cuban Communist Party. And so they would be replacing President Diaz-Canel in power and establish a a government that would be much more likely to collaborate with the U.S. government, with U.S. interests. But it wouldn't be necessarily a complete break with the type of authoritarian rule that we've seen in Cuba for decades already. It would most likely be a government where there would be some sort of political liberalization, perhaps less repression, but still not really a democratic government. However, what that government's main job would be, at least in the short to medium term, would be to facilitate exchanges with the United States government and to facilitate foreign investment, especially of U.S. investment in the island as part of this new, let's say, overarching political and economic deal.
And how does the U.S. get that done? How do they, especially if they're not changing regime, so to speak, how do they pressure Cuba to make that happen?
Exactly. So the one tool at their disposal, or it seems the principal tool at the U.S.'s disposal, is the oil embargo that's already been implemented since the early mid-January. We think a direct military intervention is unlikely. The Cuban government is probably ready to fight any sort of a U.S. military venture. The U.S. is already involved currently in Iran, so we think a military intervention is unlikely. But the type of pressure that the U.S. government can put on Cuba through the oil blockade is tremendous, right? Because Cuba depends on foreign deliveries of oil for its oil supplies, and without oil, Cuba cannot generate electricity. So Cuba's dependent on that.
So just to interject, because a lot of people's sort of understanding of the history of Cuba and the United States would go to thinking, well, Cuba can withstand a great deal of pressure before they give in. What makes now different, or this type of pressure that they're exerting, the U.S. is exerting, more likely to result in change in your view?
Right, that's an excellent question, because Cuba has been through a period of tremendously difficult economic period in the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed, right, which was Cuba's main ally. Right now, the difference seems to be that Cuba's allies are very few and far between, but also it appears that Cuba's infrastructure is really collapsing. And so this weekend, for instance, there were power outages again that were certainly due to the weakness of the electrical grid itself. So even when it functions, it doesn't function correctly because it's in such a state of disrepair, right? And so the Cuban economy has been undermined by this ongoing blockade, and right now, the oil blockade itself is also akin to some kind of a diplomatic isolation up to a certain extent. Cuba's traditional allies over the past few years have been Russia, and Russia's basically tied down in its war in the Ukraine, and China. And China has remained relatively quiet. It appears that it doesn't want to engage the United States in kind of an open disagreement or conflict as concerns Cuba. And so Cuba appears to be really isolated at the moment. And that really changes the game.
China has been certainly quiet. You're right. Jean-Francois Maire, thank you very much for this analysis. We appreciate your time on CBC this morning.
Well, thank you so much.
That's Jean-Francois Maire, as I said, a political scientist over at Concordia University. Everyone, of course, watching Cuba, Latin America, whatever might come next in that region. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us. We haven't had any calls about it being as slippery as yesterday. Still take it easy out there, as it's pretty brisk and very cold up north. Still ahead, we have business news coming up. The Hudson's Bay has more stock up for options. So we're going to hear a bit about that and more from Krista Lee after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is minus 16. A cold start to the day, but we will actually get close to seasonal this afternoon, warming up to a high today of minus 4. Manitobans are far more likely to be denied medical assistance in dying or Maid than people in any other province. Marion Penner broke her pelvis in a fall in December, leaving her bedridden. The Steinbach woman spent her 94th birthday in hospital and is waiting for palliative care. With no prospect of her condition improving, Penner applied for Maid.
What's the point to just to exist because of painkillers?
Penner was told she did not qualify for Maid well before the minimum required assessment time. Dr. Stephanie Green is with the Canadian Association of Maid Assessors and Providers.
The law requires a minimum of 90 days to allow for that kind of work that needs to be done.
In 2024, Manitoba Maid denials were 32%, 5 times higher than the national average. The province's total was almost identical to Ontario's, a province more than 10 times its size. More U.S. Tomahawk missiles are being launched towards Iran. Both countries insisting they alone will decide when this war ends. Iran says it will not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region if the U.S. and Israeli attacks continue. U.S. President Donald Trump says if that happens, Iran will be hit 20 times harder. Now, MPs debated the war in Iran last night, calling for clarity from the government. Prime Minister Mark Carney was absent from the debate. He's come under criticism over a series of shifting statements he's made about the war since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran last month. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre agreed with Carney's original statement, saying it is in the national interest for the regime in Iran to be removed and replaced with a democratically elected government. Other MPs questioned how Carney could support the American military offensive on day one, while also arguing the need to defend international law. Meanwhile, shots have been fired at the U.S. consulate in downtown Toronto. Police say no one was hurt. It is not yet clear who did the shooting or whether it is war-related. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. The conflict in Iran is driving up the cost of fertilizer for Manitoba farmers. Shipments of nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur, key ingredients for fertilizer, aren't getting through the Strait of Hormuz. Stuart Persson is the national leader of crop services at MNP. He says fertilizer and fuel prices are under significant pressure.
We get a spike in wheat, canola, corn, soybeans, the major crops. That may offset some of these fertilizer or these input cost spikes. But if we don't get that spike in prices, it's going to be a tough year.
Persson suggests farmers work with agronomists to reduce waste and make sure they're not over-applying fertilizer. In a statement to CBC, Fertilizer Canada says it is encouraging farmers to consult with local retailers on fertilizer supply. A pair of northern Manitoba communities are well on their way to having new indoor pools. Both Thompson and Flin Flon are working on the new projects. Flin Flon's pool is almost finished, while Thompson's is still under construction. Both communities are surrounded by lakes and water, so learning to swim is vital. Flin Flon Recreation Director Caitlin Bailey says the pools will help with public safety.
Get a spike in
having a location where not only children, adults, newcomers can hone their skills when it comes to swimming before they're out on a boat, before they're at the beach, things like that. It's really important to be able to have access to that.
Both communities had pools in the past, but both shut down several years ago. And since then, the Paw has been the only town in the region with its own community pool. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Yesterday was one of those days where I feel like I lied to everybody on the radio.
Oh, no.
You know how that comes up with the weather, where I'm like, oh, it's going to be so cold this afternoon. And then despite the temperature, I know we're below normal, but in Winnipeg at least, I mean, I'm not speaking of the whole province, but it felt pretty good yesterday, I thought, kind of springy again.
It really did. And you know what makes a big difference for me? Not only the wind or the lack of wind, but the sky. It looks like a summer sky again.
Yep, totally. The light has changed. That daylight saving we're benefiting from the first day yesterday, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as Heather said, today we will be closer to normal, temperature-wise as well. Here in the south, that is. So here's Abby with our regional forecast.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the story is different for the northern part of the province this morning. Still tracking extra. It's actually cold in the northern part of the province. Not all the regions getting the warnings, but Tuduli Lake and Brochet, we're seeing extreme cold really returning to that region. We're talking about dangerous morning wind chills between minus 45 and minus 50 as we speak. Just checking conditions in Tudula Lake this morning. It's jumped from that minus 38 that I talked about earlier, now minus 41 in that part of the province, and the wind chill close to minus 51. While the south still it's going to be enjoying some sunny stats close to seasonal highs. We'll see minus 4s and minus 3s in the southern region. Winnipeg right now hovering between minus 15 and minus 17, depending on where you are in the city. Mostly cloudy to start. Expect a sunny condition to sweep in as you see daylight. Then you expect a mix of sun and clouds later in the afternoon. We do have this slim chance of light snow in the forecast. We then warm up to that high of minus 4 later with a southerly breeze tonight. The slim chance of snow continues before it clears as we get into the overnight period before tomorrow morning. For the Pembina Valley region, Modern Winkler, Alton and Morris, all the way towards Headlight, we're tracking temperatures around minus 11 at this time. Mostly cloudy conditions. Also expecting a slim chance of light snow later in the day. That region warms up close to minus 3 today. Brandon towards Nipawin, we're looking at clear conditions there. Minus 17 at this time. You also warm to minus 3 later. There's a good chance of flurries in the forecast this afternoon. Dauphin towards Russell, we're seeing mainly clear conditions. Minus 19 at this time. Warming up to minus 3. Also similar to Brandon, a good chance of flurries in the forecast. Good morning, Gimli. You're clear at this time. Minus 21 at this time. Reaching a high of minus 6. A slim chance of light snow and a brisk morning wind chill close to minus 28 for the Interlake region. Now, the powerful influence, we're seeing light snow there between minus 14 and minus 17. You warm to minus 9. Thompson and Nin Lake, we're seeing you hover between minus 28 and minus 31. Cloudy skies, you warm up to close to minus 15, but the morning wind chill is as low as minus 41. In Gillam, we're seeing partly cloudy conditions, minus 33 at this time. Wind chill close to minus 40. And for Lynn Lake and Churchill, it's almost a tie there. We're seeing frigid 36 and minus 34 in the regions. Highs will be between minus 21 and minus 25, but the wind chill already around minus 45 this morning. So it's a stark contrast between the seasonal sunny down south and still pretty cold in the northern part of the province.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk is here with the commute. I think it's straight ahead right now, eh?
Yeah, straight ahead. Been pretty quiet so far. The only issue might be on the highways actually up north between Thompson and Lynn Lake, looking like poor visibility and covered conditions on the highways there on 391. Other than that, though, if you do see something else going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Now, just briefly, I'm wondering, are you finding all your stuff? Corey's just been through a move, so that's why he wasn't here.
Yeah.
And sometimes after that, it's like, where's my coffee cup? Where's that? Like, things are in boxes.
This morning, I was trying to find peanut butter to put on, or like a wow butter, because I'm allergic to nuts. But to put on, it took me like 5 minutes to try to figure that out. Even just getting dressed right now, like we haven't put any stuff away in our dressers yet, so I just got a big pile of clothes I'm just like fishing through. So.
Isn't it funny how you get you don't even realize how you get used to your pod,
so
to speak, like where things are in your home, and
Yeah, so it's kind of I'm like a stranger in my own house right now, but we're getting there.
The kids, I'm just curious. Corey's got little kids. Did they run in? How they do with their new space?
You know what, they did great. They it's a bit more space than our last place, so it's lots of room for them to run around, and they're having lots of fun. And we're doing a multi-generational thing, so they get to now go run into.
I'm saying that with surprise. I know this, but
yes,
I'm going to let you share as much as you want to share.
So they get to run down. We live in a duplex now with my parents, so now they have a whole other space now to go run down into their place too. So the one downside though is I'm sore because we moved in and now it's like, oh, time to move my folks. So now yesterday I spent the whole day moving after already moving our stuff. So
it's a lot of work, man.
A lot of work.
Well, if you don't want to actively commute, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning.
Okay, that might need it. We'll see.
All right, Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Funk back after a couple days off here. 21 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. That intergenerational thing actually is really interesting. If you also are doing that, we'd love to hear from you. There's been actually a lot of stories about that. People choosing to sort of live with multi-generations under one roof for various reasons. I didn't want to dig into Corey's personal life too much, but if you have a story to share about that and why you might have done it, we'd love to hear yours. 788-3205. And maybe you've got some wow butter for Corey. Crystalie Ramlakan is here now with our business news. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So markets are rebounding now after a tough week, of course, with the war in the Middle East. What is behind the changes in your view?
Yes, so stocks are slightly higher and oil prices have fallen a little bit after President Donald Trump signaled the war may be coming closer to an end. And that would also make oil supplies more secure. So yesterday afternoon, Trump said the war was very far ahead of schedule. The unexpected assessment has eased some investor concerns about the long-term economic impact of the conflict. And the president's comments lifted the S&P 500, recouping some of last week's loss, which was the biggest weekly decline for the benchmark index in about 5 months. But of course, there are still some concerns as there are not a lot of details as to how the fighting is going to stop. And Trump also hinted that more aggressive military action would come should Iran persist in blocking oil tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And the fallout from rising energy costs has already been felt across the globe. The war is doing collateral damage to the world economy. The conflict is driving up grain and fertilizer prices and threatening food shortages in some countries. And it's also complicating options for central bankers who try to fight inflation. And like I said, much of the pain is being caused by an effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which carries a fifth of the world's oil.
Yeah, we have a story about fertilizer here in Manitoba and how producers are being affected by what's going on. So next details on that coming up before the top of the clock with Heather. Now, there's another part to this oil story that could affect prices also, right?
Yes, so global action to release strategic oil reserves could come as soon as today when G7 energy ministers meet to discuss how to bolster supplies and calm energy markets that have surged to near 4-year highs. So finance ministers with the group of 7 industrialized countries held an emergency meeting yesterday to discuss the potential of intervening in the market as their economies face new inflationary pressure from the run-up in oil prices. So U.S. officials believe a joint release of 300 to 400 million barrels would be appropriate, and such volumes could be the largest ever, possibly topping what the U.S. and International Energy Agency members released in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, IEA member countries hold more than 1.2 billion barrels of public emergency oil stocks, and a spokesperson for Canada's Energy and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson says Canada is closely monitoring the situation and is coordinating with allies through the G7 and the IEA. So Hodgson will be part of today's G7 meeting. And Canada is an IEA member, but as one of the world's top producers and a net exporter, it is not obligated to keep strategic stockpiles. And refiners and marketers keep buffer supplies on hand in case of emergencies, and those could be used to supply the domestic market if necessary.
And finally, this morning in your report, Hudson's Bay has more stock up for auction. What now? What can you tell us?
Yes, that's right. So the latest sale of the company's treasures features 56 coats, including many with the HBC's iconic stripes. Some of the coats are a nod to the 355-year-old company's fur trading history and are made of beaver, silver fox, or mink fur. Also part of the auction are dozens of art pieces, a reproduction of the 1670 Royal Charter that formed the company, vintage cash registers, and an HBC piano. So Heffel Fine Art Auction House will start accepting online bids for the items today. The sale will run until March 19th. And this is the 5th group of HBC items Heffel has auctioned since the department store closed all of its stores last June.
I love vintage cash registers, like those really ornate ones. Yeah. That are heavy and all carved and...
That would be a great piece in somebody's business or even someone's home. Like, you know how a lot of people have like the vintage typewriters? Like
totally. Except if you had it in your business, you'd have a use for it. If you had it in your home, I was just thinking, like, what would I do? Like, where would I put it? You know what I mean? That's always the thing. So.
Yeah, there's a cute little pizza spot here that has a vintage cash register, and I always see it and oh, that looks so good in here.
I know. Very cool decorating. All right. Thank you very much, Crystalie.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
An interesting history as well, of course. Crystalie Ramlichan with our business news. She's here every day at this time. Well, not as slippery as yesterday. Not yet, at least. We haven't had any calls about the perimeter and such. It was crazy yesterday, but it looks like it's going to be pretty straight ahead, but cold. We do know that northern Manitoba does have some highways that are partly covered. Check 511 before you head out, just in case. There is that cold warning continuing, yellow level for Brochet into Dooley Lake with wind chills around minus 45. Winnipeg today going to be right around minus 4, which is a return to normal. Well, we have a new tune from Arberg's Wanda Sparks. She says it's about a free-spirited woman who touches the lives of others in her own quiet way, kind of like a tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed was born in a little prairie town. Never stayed long, they were always moving round. As she tumbled through the land, she kept picking up ground from the hearts and the love of the people that she found. She was named Tumbleweed 'cause they wanted her to be a child of the earth, living wild and free. Raised her to be kind and raised her to be good. When she tumbled into town, somehow people understood. Tumble on, little tumbleweed, lightly touching everyone you meet. Never stays, but she never really leaves. Tumble on, little tumbleweed. Looking through the pictures of the places she's been, thinking of the people that she'll never see again. Remembers all the faces, though she can't recall the names. But she's happy to have met them, and she hopes they feel the same. Tumble on, little tumbleweed, lightly touching everyone you meet. Never stays, but she never really leaves. Tumble on, little tumbleweed. Tumbleweed wishes that she could have done more, drifting all around, finding ports in every storm. But the power and the wealth that so many have achieved are no greater than the kindness that she gave and she received. So tumble on, little tumbleweed, lightly touching everyone you meet. Never stays, but she never really leaves. Tumble on, little tumbleweed. So tumble on, little tumbleweed, lightly touching everyone you meet. Never stays, but she never really leaves. Tumble on, little tumbleweed. So tumble on, little tumbleweed, lightly touching everyone you meet. Never stays, but she never really leaves. Tumble on, little tumbleweed. Yeah, tumble, 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 tumble.
Kind of ended as a 50s bop there out of nowhere, right? Pretty folky up to there. That's from Arberg, Wanda Sparks, and Tumbleweed. If the folk action is your jam, then you probably are excited because last week they announced the lineup for the 51st Annual Folk Fest in Birds Hill Park. There's 67 artists on the bill this year. One of the headliners that they're pretty excited about is Of Monsters and Men. They hail from Reykjavik. Apparently they've been trying to get them to play here at the Folk Fest for like 15 years, and they will be playing in the park this summer. If you want to read the full lineup, you can check out our coverage at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Do you agree with me on this? Yes. Wait a minute. Am I talking to myself?
When we debate online, we may as well be talking in an echo chamber. CBC is changing that. Manitoba Talks, a matching software that brings together people with opposing views. Different views, one conversation. Sign up today and challenge your perspective at cbc.ca/mbtalks.
Time right now is 10 to 7 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Corey Funk and Abby Adeyemi and Darren Marash in our control room. Heather Wells is here too from our news center, and she'll join us with next local headlines right before 7 o'clock. Right now, though, to get us there, let's talk about national politics. Last night in the House of Commons, MPs debated Canada's policy on the war in the Middle East. It was the first time they've done that since the war started. Foreign Minister Anita Anand clarified the federal government's position. We will play that clip for you momentarily, so we're just going to get that for you. But Ryan Tumulty is here to walk us through it. So I believe we're going to have that clip in a sec. Ryan, why don't we start just before we hear from Anita Anand? What's your headline about how you characterize the viewpoints that emerged in the debate last night?
Yeah, I would say, and what we've been seeing this sort of come together over the past week, but I think the parties actually aren't that far apart on Iran. The Liberals and the Conservatives have both said that they support changing the Iranian regime. They talk about the way the government has been a state sponsor of terror. Its search for a nuclear weapon. Obviously there's a Canadian connection to this. In 2020, the Iranian regime shot down a civilian airliner that had dozens of Canadians on board. That Ukrainian Airlines flight. They were similar in their condemnation. I think where they were different is that the Liberals are a little bit more concerned about U.S. and Israel actions here. They are concerned that the government, that the U.S. and Israel are not following international law. And then you've also heard from the NDP who say that, if the government is serious about international law and supporting international law, they have to call it out when it's being broken, as they sort of acknowledge that it is being in this case. So sort of broad agreement on the ideas, but obviously nuances that are important.
Okay, let's hear from the Liberals. Here's the Foreign Affairs Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been clear. Canada was not consulted. Canada did not participate, and Canada has no plans to participate in the offensive strikes against Iran.
So where are they at that point? I mean, if they're in agreement, Ryan, you were saying on most of the things, Canada will not be getting directly involved in this, was something that came out of last night. Did that message change through the debate?
No, that hasn't changed through the debate. I think there's nuance there, right? Because the government initially said Canada would not get involved, kind of full stop, and now it has opened up. Even before the debate, to the idea that we may have to step in to defend allies. So not directly attacking Iran the way the U.S. and Israel are, but Iran has fired drones and missiles at a lot of Gulf states, to countries as far away as Turkey, which of course is a NATO ally. So the Prime Minister has sort of left a little bit of wiggle room in his statements for the idea that, maybe Canada sends some support to those countries to help defend their airspace. That could be important, of course, to Canadians on the ground if we can keep airports there open. But so far we haven't heard any idea that any party wants to change that idea.
Why was the debate important in discussing Canadian policy, in your view, regarding the war at this time?
Listen, this is a global war that is growing, and it's spiraling up. I think right now more people are getting involved. It is becoming bigger than I think people thought it might. And it's important, I think, to have Canadian politicians on the record about something like that. That is where these things are important, and you get into some of the nuance. This isn't going to change Canadian government policy, I don't think. The Prime Minister didn't attend this debate. He sent Anand in instead. But it is putting on the record how the various political parties feel.
Can you walk us through some of the chief concerns about the conflict and who did voice them, if you look at the Conservatives to start?
Yeah, I mean, for the Conservatives to start, they were talking not so much about where the government is today, but its kind of meandering path to get here. The first statement from the Prime Minister was very strong in support of the U.S. and Israeli action. Later on in the week, he started talking about the need to respect international law and that ideally the U.S. and Israel would have followed that process and gone to the UN, have a broader discussion. He initially said Canadian troops would not be involved, but then opened up this caveat that they might be involved in defending Gulf states. So there has been a little bit of a shift there, and that was the Conservatives' principal concern. I would say the NDP were much more direct and to the point. They don't support this war. They think this should be handled at the UN, that this should be handled through diplomacy, and they've sort of condemned the government for supporting the Trump administration.
And what did MPs say specifically about the effects on Canadians that are in the region?
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is something that Minister Anand brought up. She talked about what they're doing. They've chartered flights. They've bought blocks of tickets on commercial flights. They've brought together buses to get Canadians out of the region. Certainly what we're seeing from the reports the government issues about the number of people who've registered and the number of people who've requested assistance is that most Canadians in the region are sitting still for now. They haven't asked for support to leave just yet. Obviously, that can change very quickly. And I think, that is something the government is very alive to. We didn't hear much criticism of that effort from opposition parties, but certainly I'm sure they'll be watching it.
We'll leave it there this morning, Ryan. Thank you for your analysis as always. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Ryan Tumulty joining us live, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Stay tuned. We will talk to him again. He's here most Tuesdays on the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being here this Tuesday morning with us. It is March 10th. It is minus 16 in Winnipeg. We've got a cloudy sky out there. Well, foot in mouth, right? A Golden Globe winning actor questioned if anyone still cares about ballet in a recent interview. In fact, he said no one cares about it. Here's what the new artistic director of the RWB had to say about actor Timothée Chalamet's recent ballet burn.
So we're performing this week, and we are practically selling out. So just factually, that is actually not true. People are eager to see ballet in our experience.
We're going to hear more of the reaction to what Chalamet had to say and how it's resonating even here in Winnipeg. So stay tuned. That's coming up in the next hour. Also in the next hour of the show, it was built 123 years ago. It went through many changes over the lifetime, but it's now been sold to a new owner. We're going to learn more about the history and the future of the King's Hotel. So stay tuned. It's in South Point Douglas in Winnipeg. You have likely passed it along your travels here in Manitoba. If you've been in Winnipeg lately, then you might be wondering what's next for it. So we're going to find out some of the history. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's live in our news center today with other developing stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a 96-year-old Steinbach woman has been told she's too healthy for an assisted death. Marion Penner is bedridden in hospital with chronic diseases and a broken pelvis. She says she has no prospect of her condition improving and relies on painkillers, but she's not the only one who's applied for Maid but denied. According to a federal report, Manitoba has by far the highest ratio of denied Maid requests in Canada. We'll hear more. And the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is increasing the cost of fertilizer. Poplar Point farmer Carl Stewart says the longer the supply chain is disrupted, the greater the risks are for farmers. We'll hear about that, too, coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Oh, Heather Wells, I just did a broadcaster no-no. I'm on the main network while you're doing your headlines, and I forgot. I thought they cut away to the shot of you, and I blew my nose.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry, everyone. Trying to be relatable. Maybe you have a cold, too. All right, that's headlines. Thank you, Heather. Next local news, as she said, coming up at 7:30. In Winnipeg, minus 16. Our high today is going to be minus 4. More seasonal than we have had, so that's the temperature-wise. Sunny, really cold in the north, though. Still at cold level warning for Tuduli and Brochet, where it feels with wind chill like minus 45. Your drive so far, your morning commute's been pretty good. So call us if you do spot anything we should be passing along to keep us all safe. And that number is 788-3093. Stay with us. World Report's coming up next.
On the current.
Mom, he's doing it again. Bye, quit it. Hey, quit it, Mom!
Is there someone in your life who is a constant hassle, someone who stresses you out? Researchers who study hasslers said having a lot of them in your life can actually make you age faster. How to deal with a hassler, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Idil Musa. Iran's capital is being hit hard as Israel launches a new wave of attacks. The Iranian Red Crescent Society released video this morning showing people being rescued from bombed buildings in Tehran. U.S. President Donald Trump says the war will end soon, but the fighting appears to be ramping up. So is the rhetoric. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is expected to speak this hour. But first, I'm joined by the CBC's David Common in Amman, Jordan. David, what more can you tell us?
Itho, one key question throughout this conflict is what needs to happen to end it. President Trump has offered the first hint on timing, saying it could be over soon, though not this week. He says the aims are mostly complete. As he said that, oil prices came down, though not back to where they were before the war. So that may have been the point for Trump, to try to drive those oil prices down. He's also musing about acquiring Iranian oil without providing any detail about how that would happen. So it is hard to say exactly when this might end, even with these hints. Iran has a new supreme leader, very much in the image of the last, his father, who was deemed intolerable by both the U.S. and Israel. The regime seems very intent on keeping up not only its practices, but its retaliation. Iran was bombed massively last night, especially in the capital. Some residents describing huge white flashes that were seen repeatedly. It's clear many hundreds have died in Iran, but getting an accurate picture is tough. Finally, I would note President Trump continues to claim Iran may have been the one bombing that girls' school, killing 168. There is quite a bit of evidence that suggests otherwise, and now video of a Tomahawk missile striking the school compound. Tomahawk missiles are not used by Iran or Israel.
David, what is happening on the Israel-Hezbollah front?
Israel continues to pound Beirut in particular. Flights, though, continuing to take off from the main airport there, with passengers often looking out a window and seeing huge clouds of smoke and dust as a high-rise building collapses. More than 700,000 people, mostly from Beirut, have fled their homes, according to the UN, many of them hoping this front for Israel will soon end. Meanwhile, Syria accusing Hezbollah of firing into its territory overnight as well.
The CBC's David Common in Amman, Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Iran is firing back, launching drones and missiles at Israel and Gulf Arab states. In response to the barrage, countries in the Persian Gulf are reducing their oil output. Megan Williams has the latest from Dubai.
Across the region, air defense systems were active overnight and into the morning. In Iraq, eyewitness videos circulating on social media showed dark smoke and flames rising near the UAE consulate in Erbil late last night. Kurdish counterterrorism authorities say 3 drones were intercepted in the area, with debris from one falling close to the consulate compound. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry says it intercepted and destroyed a ballistic missile and 2 drones earlier this morning. Kuwait's armed forces are also on high alert, with officials there saying their air defense systems shot down 2 ballistic missiles and a drone. The Gulf has come under sustained attack since the United States and Israel struck Iran on February 28th. In the days since, more than 2,000 Iranian missiles and drones have been launched towards Gulf countries. The United Arab Emirates has been the most heavily targeted state in the region, accounting for more than half the attacks. One of the most recent strikes hit Bahrain's oil refinery yesterday, injuring 32 people and forcing the state oil company to declare force majeure. At the same time, tensions among the Gulf countries are rising. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar had all spent years trying to ease tensions with Iran. But after coming under attack themselves, confidence in those diplomatic efforts has mostly evaporated. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
Police are at the U.S. consulate in Toronto investigating an incident this morning where a firearm was discharged at the building. The CBC's Clara Pasica is at the scene.
The area around the American consulate located on University Avenue in Toronto's downtown core is now surrounded by dozens of police vehicles. Toronto police were called here at about 5:30 a.m., responding to reports that someone discharged a firearm. The consulate is now behind police tape. Police have now confirmed there was, in fact, evidence of gunfire here this morning. A huddle of officers are examining a door where we can see bullet holes through the glass. There are no reports of injuries. Police have not released any suspect information at this time or spoken about how the shooting unfolded. This location has seen multiple protests since the U.S. began launching missiles against Iran, but police have not attributed a motivation to this morning's shooting. We've reached out to the U.S. consulate for comment, but have not received any response yet. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
TikTok will be allowed to maintain its physical presence in Canada. It has reached an agreement with the federal government, one that sets guardrails to protect Canadians' data and allow regulatory oversight. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, the government cited serious national security concerns when it ordered TikTok to close its Canadian operations back in 2024. What's changed?
Back in January, the federal court set aside that shutdown order. The very next day, U.S. regulators announced a deal with TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to put its U.S. operations under the ownership and control of an American board. Now we know what the deal's going to be to continue its business in Canada. Last night's statement from Industry Minister Melanie Joly says that TikTok has agreed to enhance the protection of personal data with new security barriers. Remember, an app like this has access to all sorts of personal data on smartphones. The fear was that because TikTok was Chinese-owned, it could ultimately be compelled to hand over data from Canadian mobile devices under orders from the Chinese Communist Party. The new privacy-enhancing technologies that TikTok's committing to here will apparently reduce the risk of that kind of unauthorized access to Canadian data. The minister said that a third-party monitor will be appointed to audit and verify the integrity of these new controls. And as the Carney government considers implementing a social media ban for young people, it's notable that this deal also includes enhanced protections for minors, something that Canada's Privacy Commissioner had recommended.
But there is still a ban on government devices, right?
Yeah, the minister's statement last night was silent on that. While this app was never banned for individual Canadians to use, it's possible that when it comes to the security of government data, the bar might be higher. It's also worth noting that Canada's diplomatic dialogue with China has improved considerably compared to when Canada first launched its national security review 3 years ago.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Despite international sanctions, a Canadian-led firm funneled pearls to Myanmar's military junta after the 2021 coup. A CBC News investigation has determined the RCMP was asked to look at the activities of Belle Pearl almost 2 years ago. But authorities won't say whether they have taken up the case. The CBC's Murray Brewster has been working with our Visual Investigations Unit, and he brings us this exclusive story.
Wow!
Vendors taking an up-close look at how a pearl farm operates. The harvest of pearls in South Asia is huge business, worth tens of millions of dollars a year, especially Burmese or Myanmar golden pearls. CBC News has learned a company with Canadian directors has operated a pearl farm in Myanmar together with a state-owned enterprise, an agency with direct ties to the country's murderous military regime. Documents show Belle Pearl operates through a network of related entities registered in Toronto, Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and Myanmar. The regime in Myanmar has waged a civil war since 2021 and has been accused of committing brutal atrocities, killing thousands. The state-run entity that Belle Pearl Myanmar has been dealing with is under sanction by Canada and its allies.
Myanmar Pearls are really funding this military junta.
William Pellerin, an Ottawa-based lawyer representing the human rights group Justice for Myanmar, presented the RCMP with documents alleging the involvement of Marie Hajar and Pierre Hajar in Belle Pearl's Myanmar operation almost 2 years ago.
So I think the Government of Canada has an obligation to uphold the law.
The Hajars did not respond to repeated CBC News requests for comment. The company, Belle Pearl, denies it has violated sanctions, but also says its Canadian directors have now stepped down. The RCMP says it does not confirm or deny investigations until charges are laid. Marie Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, March 10th. Thanks for spending some time with us here at Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned. We have a serious story this hour to tell you about. A 94-year-old woman from Steinbach says she wants to die. We're going to hear more about her condition. A doctor has diagnosed her with a condition that is incurable and serious. She has applied for medical assistance in dying. Her daughter says, so even before the application was in, she was told she would not qualify. So we're going to hear more about that story. In addition, this hour on the show, the former King's Hotel in South Point Douglas has a new owner. The 123-year-old building, though, has also a rich history. So what is that history as we watch another hotel in Winnipeg that's about to undergo some serious change? Stay tuned. We'll walk you through it in a moment. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's here with other stories that are developing in our news center today. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the conflict in Iran is driving up the cost of fertilizer for Manitoba farmers. Shipments of nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur, key ingredients for fertilizer, are not getting through the Strait of Hormuz. Stuart Pearson is the national leader of crop services at MNP. He says fertilizer and fuel prices are under significant pressure, predicting a tough year for producers. Two northern communities are working on new pool projects for fun, for learning, and for safety. Thompson and Flin Flon are building new pools, facilities to host competition, recreation, and swimming lessons. Both of those communities are surrounded by lakes and waters. Learning to swim is vital. So we'll hear more about those projects coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
Okay, let's get into the weather forecast. Abby, what do we know?
Yeah, Marcy, it's still the morning of extreme contrast. It continues for the province. Yellow warnings in effect for the Brochet and Tudeli Lake region. We're talking about extreme cold in place for that part of the province, bringing dangerous wind chills near -50. Frostbite in less than 5 minutes. So you need to take care. While the north is gripped by those extreme, biting cold, the southern part of the province would be more like sunny conditions with a seasonal Tuesday mix of sun and clouds. Highs between -3 and -4 down south. Winnipeg, we're looking at -16s, -17 at this time. Cloudy conditions, but we're expecting the sun to make its appearance shortly, and it's going to warm things up to about -4 by the afternoon period. We will notice the winds from the south. It's going to peak up, while we might see the wind chill close to -26 in the city. Across board, we're seeing temperatures just between -20 and -18 in the southern region for now.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk had an active commute in. What was that like first?
Yeah, it was pretty, actually, you know what? It was cold. It was brisk, but the wind didn't hurt my face. So that always feels like a bonus. But I would say after the nice Sunday warm-up, it just you just lose all of your winter resilience, I find. You're just like,
you're losing the joy. It's that time of year, though, because we're all waiting.
Yeah.
Right? I live with a golfer, and now he started to bring the clubs in the living room and swing them just to feel them again. Maybe
putting
sometime.
all my winter stuff to my toque and stuff. I'm just done.
I know. Otherwise in traffic, what's up?
Otherwise, there is an issue right now at Abinogi-Mikana, just past St. Anne's. That's westbound Abinogi-Mika, just past St. Anne's. There's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the median lane. So keep right to get around that. That's according to the Winnipeg Traffic Management Center. So if you have any updates on that, if that's causing any backups for folks, would love to get an update. You can tell me anything else you're seeing out there if you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour, as I mentioned, the King's Hotel on Higgins Street in Winnipeg has a new owner. So the building was listed for $950,000. It was sold for an undisclosed price. But we wanted to look back at a bit of the history here before we move forward with a new plan for it. The three-story building was built in 1903. It's undergone a whole bunch of different makeovers, and it's changed actually a lot of hands in its long life. But to talk more about the King's Hotel is local historian and blogger Christian Cassidy. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
Do you know what I was thinking when you were coming in this morning? I thought, man, if you're in this city as a historian, you sure know a lot about hotels.
Yes, absolutely. And I love researching them. I mean, there's some of the oldest established businesses in our community, and tens of thousands of people have passed through them that, moved on to, when they came to town and lived there for a year or two while they got on their feet and went on to do their part to play build the city. So,
yeah. And so many of the old ones still standing, and unfortunately the ones that we've lost this year in the past 18 months or so as well. So the King's is still standing. When it opened, who was passing through the doors? What was it like?
Well, the King's Hotel opened in 1903, and it was called the Richelieu Hotel back then. And a couple of members of our local Francophone community got together to put it together. It was a gentleman named Joseph Napoleon Levesque, who was the person who financed it. And the person who built it was a man named Henri Soucis. And Mr. Soucis was kind of at the tail end of his career at this time, but he, in the mid-1880s, was part of a business partnership that built things like the previous legislative building, Government House, the Central Post Office for both Regina and Winnipeg, some buildings for the Northwest Mounted Police. So he had a
He was
huge, very storied career as a contractor, and I guess he came out of, semi-retirement, I think, to build the hotel. And unfortunately, only lasted for about 2 or 3 years under Mr. Levesque. He died at the age of 35, just a couple of years after it opened. And then after that, it went through a string of people who owned it for maybe 1 year or 2 years, about 7 owners in about 15 years. And the sense I got from looking back into it is it was probably always a working class, kind of a working man's hotel. It had 28 rooms, a pool room, a little cafe, and a barber shop. And because sometimes when you look back at the history of these hotels, some of them had a magnificent dining room, or they had a dance hall with an orchestra and things like that back in the early days. King's didn't seem to have anything like that. And when you look at either census street directories or census records, it was full of residents. So it wasn't a tourist hotel. It was kind of off the beaten track, right? It wasn't on Main Street. And it was Teamsters, laborers, CP rail workers.
People building Winnipeg.
And I think just it was really kind of probably meant to be kind of a residential hotel for people coming to work in and around the railway there.
And I was going to say, and it's tucked back in there where the Ironworks building would have been, which just went through, I think, some fire. And then it's right there by where the, as you said, the railway was. So maybe coming off doing that work as Winnipeg was getting ready to boom.
Yeah, and that he seemed to be who filled the rooms for the first, say, 20, 30 years.
When you look at it, what is significant about it, either architecturally or when you think about who it was named for? Is there anything else significant about the actual history of the place that would put it on the map historically?
Well, not really. I mean, it kind of
pretty basic hotel.
It stayed quiet.
Yep.
It had a couple of things. It changed its name to the Roman Hotel in 1922, and it was a couple of high-profile people from the Romanian community who owned it, and it became kind of a Romanian cultural hub. And then again, in the I think it was in the 30s, the Bodnars ran it, and they were Slovakian. And there was a whole bunch of events there for the Canadian-Slovak League, which at the time was based in Winnipeg. So there were all sorts of dinners and ceremonies and things like that were held there. So a lot of different ethnic groups kind of had it as their own for a while. And then for about 30 years, it was owned by Drury's Brewery. And that happened usually during the Depression. A lot of these hotels fell into debt, couldn't get out of it. There was no money to be had. And usually their largest creditor was one of the breweries. So would either sell it at cost or just throw the keys at the brewery rep and say, here, you take it. So it had a really uncertain beginning. And then kind of in the 1930s, when breweries took it over, they fixed it up. They were the ones who changed the name to the King's Hotel. And they usually did a pretty good job of finding people to lease it to that would have it long term. So after that, it had all of these, people who had it for 10 years or 15 years. And then the last big owners were I think they were the Bartmanoviches, and they had it for 20 years up until 1992.
When they changed it to the King's Hotel, I don't know if we know this, but why King's? Is it? I'm
not sure. A lot of these.
They didn't name it after the brewery,
Yeah, that's right. Well, they had to name it
Rebrand
away from the Roman Hotel because the Gates family had moved on, and I'm not sure what the King's, kind of a regal name for.
Yeah. Stood for. So since 1992, has it been shuttered? Has it been sitting? Has it, been quiet?
It's faced the decline that a lot of these hotels do. It's they're getting older and harder to maintain, and it went through a period up until about 2020. It closed. There was an owner, had it for a few years up until 2020. He's since passed away, but around COVID times, he sold it off, and that's when it really hit trouble. It had its liquor license pulled a couple of different times in just a 3 or 4 year period, and in 2024 it was shuttered and put up for sale.
So obviously, the Manwin, the Sutherland have both burnt to the ground. We don't know how the King's Hotel is going to be redeveloped, I should say. We don't have that confirmed. What would you like to see happen when you think about these old spaces that have some, that have history in Winnipeg?
Well, I have a soft spot for them, partly because of the history of them, but also, for 140 years, these have been for people on the lowest rung of the housing ladder, or for people who need temporary housing. These have been a perfectly suitable model, to live in, to have privacy. You have a little room, very inexpensive, a common kind of eating area, that type of thing. And, when people cheer when these places burn down or get knocked down, the folks that live there, they're not going to go buy one of the empty condos on Waterfront Drive. They're going to end up probably on the riverbank at Waterfront Drive. So, I think if they're not everybody's cup of tea to live in, and some of them probably did need to be shut down, but there are some that are fairly well run, and they can be a piece of the housing crisis puzzle that we have.
Yeah, and we'll see if this is going to be a piece of that, especially given the area that it's in. So we don't have any confirmation, like I said, of what it's going to be, the future of it. But there sure is a lot of discussion right now about needing those spaces for people and needing to reimagine what they look like.
Yeah, and and these hotels, they're kind of hard to convert into, because they are in little kind of shoebox sized rooms. They're single room occupancy hotels, so you're not going to change something like that into an office building or anything like that. They were built for a purpose, and that's it'd be kind of hard to convert that into something else. So, but if it was a type of housing, good luck to whoever is going to take it on as a renovation project. And hopefully there'll be, I don't know how many suites there are now. Originally there were 28, but hopefully at least 28 people might have a place to live in a year or two.
Thanks very much, Christian, for all of your history in our community and for being here this morning with us. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Christian Cassidy, a local historian and blogger, talking about, the history of the King's Hotel.
Ant-sized ads promoting a marvelous miniature superhero.
No, I didn't steal anything. I was returning something I stole.
A billboard for an action movie actually dripped sweat.
Ew.
And a film Saved by a Beetle got banned and still was a box office success.
I'm not the Messiah!
Creative movie marketing on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
7:24 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM. Thanks for joining us on the show this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are here looking at what's going to be a pretty decent Tuesday if you're in southern Manitoba. If you're in the north, man, you are probably ready to ditch your parka like crazy. It's still that yellow level cold warning for Brochet and Dooley, with those wind chills up around down around minus 45 is what it feels like, which is just so cold. Here in the south, we're going to be actually pretty near normal when you look at the actual number. Like a high of -4 is pretty unseasonal. But just keep in mind with wind chill here, it's going to feel this morning like minus 26. This afternoon, though, it'll feel like around minus 10. But the sunshine is just beautiful at this time of year. And with the daylight saving on Sunday, we're benefiting from it. I know last night I was like, ooh, my husband came home, was like 5:30 or something. And I'm like, wow, there's still light. And there was so much light into the evening. So it's coming, folks. It's a coming. 7:25 is the time right now. We'll still ahead on the program. You might have heard Timothy Chalamet put his foot in his mouth. For some people, watching a ballet dancer leap to great heights or pirouette on point is the definition of beauty and skill. For others, like the critically acclaimed actor Timothy Chalamet, he says no one cares about ballet. That's one of his quotes over the weekend. It's stirring up a lot of reaction, including from the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, so we're going to get that coming up at 7:40. Right now, let's find out about sports. We have Scott Regehr with us this morning, as always. Hello, Scott.
Hey there, Marcy.
So it is day 4 at the Milano Cortina Paralympic Games. What's on tap for Canada's team today?
Well, a chance, Marcy, to build on what's been a pretty strong start to the Games. Canadians have won 7 medals so far, with hopes of adding more in both cross-country and alpine skiing this morning. Among those to watch, Kalle Eriksson, who's already won 2 medals. The Kimberley, BC native can win a 3rd in the visually impaired combined event. Eriksson and his guide, Sierra Smith, are in 2nd place after the Super G. They will compete in the slalom, in the next half an hour for a medal. Now, with warm and wet weather, Marcy, conditions have been less than ideal in northern Italy. We saw this at the Olympics as well. And that is leading to concern over athletes' safety. American Amy Purdy is a former silver medalist from Pyeongchang in Paris snowboarding. And among those who want to see the Paralympics held before the Olympics instead of after them.
You have athletes with disabilities who have trained their entire lives to showcase what the possibilities are, just like the Olympians do, but they show up in the worst conditions ever. When I look back at videos of my races, they literally are the worst snowboarding I've ever done in my life. It rained the day before, and then it froze over. So I was riding on a sheet of ice with 2 prosthetic legs. It basically puts you in survival mode.
As things stand, the 2030 Games in the French Alps are slated once again to start in March. That said, with global warming, it is possible both the Paralympics and Olympics are held earlier in the winter. The IOC says it's considering a January start going forward, although competition for sports fans' eyeballs with things like the NFL playoffs would have to be sorted out. So stay tuned. And a reminder, Marcy, you can watch all of the action from the Milano Cortina Paralympics on CBC Gem.
That's an interesting idea, though, right? Paralympics first?
Yeah. I think it makes a world of sense.
Let's shift to soccer now. There's been a development in a story that we were discussing actually on yesterday's show.
Right. So Australia is granting asylum to 5 members of the Iranian women's team. They had been visiting the country for a tournament when the Iran war began. The announcement follows days of urging by Iranian groups in Australia, as well as by U.S. President Donald Trump for the Aussie government to help the women. Although they haven't spoken publicly about a wish to claim asylum, the team drew speculation after players chose not to sing the Iranian anthem before their first match. Here's Australia's Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke.
These women have been weighing up an incredibly difficult decision, and I respect that even though the offer continues to be there for other members of the team, it is quite possible and indeed likely that not every woman on the team will make a decision to take up the opportunity that Australia would offer to them. What matters here is that they have the best agency they can over those decisions.
Yeah, Burke suggesting the remaining players should feel they have options rather than feel forced to return to Iran, where state media have called them traitors for refusing to sing the national anthem. No word yet, Marcy, on what the remaining 21 players and the coaching staff will decide to do. Some of these women have kids, remember, back home. This isn't by no means an easy decision on a number of fronts.
Let's finish on the diamond. Canada has a big game at the World Baseball Classic tonight.
Yeah, it'll change of pace here. It does, versus one of the tournament's co-hosts. And when I say co-hosts, Marcy, I mean... Had to be done. I would have played Bad Bunny, but Ricky Martin's lyrics are a bit more family-friendly. With due respect to Puerto Rico's musical contributions to the world, the island's baseball contributions have been just as notable. Hall of Famer Roberto Clemente, as well as legendary Jays Carlos Delgado, Roberto Alomar, just to name a few. These days, the Puerto Ricans are led by the likes of Nolan Arenado and Edwin Diaz. They get set for Canada this evening. Now, should the Canadians prevail, Marcy, they'll be in a very good position to make the quarterfinals for the first time at a World Baseball Classic, and maybe even win their group and avoid the powerhouse Americans in the next round. So we'll see. That one starts at 6 o'clock Mountain Time this evening. And, of course, we have hockey as well. 6 o'clock Central Time. Jets will host Anaheim tonight. That's a 7:30 start time. Winnipeg in a position, I know they haven't been great this season, but to win a 4th straight game and keep those slim playoff hopes alive.
I don't like watching Ernie Clement, not play for Canada. He's American. Whenever we watch these things, it's the reminder, right? It's like that we watch our home teams.
He's not ours?
Yeah, he's not ours after all.
A bit like watching the Olympics in hockey in that regard.
Yeah.
I get it for sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, you bet.
That is Scott Regehr with sports on CBC. Your regional forecast and a check on your morning commute this Tuesday after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 16, so it feels cold when you step outside. But the good news is, mix of sun and clouds, a southerly breeze to take us to a near normal high of minus 4. A 96-year-old Steinbach woman has been told she's too healthy for an assisted death.
It's sitting in bed doing nothing, wondering why am I still here.
Marion Penner is bedridden in hospital with chronic diseases and a broken pelvis. And she's not the only one who has applied for Maid but was denied. According to November's annual federal report on Maid, Manitoba has by far the highest ratio of denied Maid requests in Canada at 32%. That's well above the national average of about 6%. Penner says she doesn't want palliative care, and now she and her daughter Valerie are looking for a better explanation.
She's going to die in the next while. It feels like the system just wants to kind of warehouse you until you do so that you don't have to really touch or affect Maid numbers.
Chronic conditions like Penner's became an eligible qualification for Maid in 2021. Shared Health says it cannot comment on specific cases, but says it has safeguards in place to protect vulnerable patients, and a doctor is supposed to clearly explain every denial. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Well, more U.S. Tomahawk missiles being launched towards Iran. Both countries insisting they alone will decide when this war ends. Iran says it will not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region if U.S. and Israeli attacks continue. U.S. President Donald Trump says if that happens, Iran will be hit 20 times harder. Now, here in this country, the House of Commons held a special debate last night on the war in Iran. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre criticizing Prime Minister Mark Carney for his stance.
He has flipped and flopped more than 4 times, having 4 contradictory positions in as many days. First, he said he was for the attack. Then he regretted his support for the attack. Then he said that his support for the attack was illegal under international law. And then he said he would consider sending troops for the attack, which he supported but regretted supporting.
Now, Carney did not attend the debate. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand outlined the government's position.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been clear. Canada was not consulted. Canada did not participate, and Canada has no plans to participate.
The Prime Minister's itinerary says he attended an event for Ramadan last night. You can hear the latest on the situation in the Middle East, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. The U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is increasing the cost of fertilizer. The conflict is blocking the Strait of Hormuz. That means key exports like nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur aren't getting through. Poplar Point farmer Carl Stewart says he's fortunate because he ordered his fertilizer before prices spiked. But he says the longer the supply chain is disrupted, the greater the risks for farmers. Stewart says it shows Canada needs to beef up its infrastructure to better deal with global emergencies.
We need to be a little bit more forward-thinking so that when things get back to normal, that they try and stay as consistent as possible, because this affects every single person in Canada, not just us farmers.
Fertilizer Canada tells CBC in a statement, farmers should consult with local retailers to stay up to date on fertilizer supply. 2 northern communities are working on new pool projects for fun, for learning, and for safety. Thompson and Flin Flon are building new pool facilities to host competition, recreation, and swimming lessons. Both communities are surrounded by lakes and water, so learning to swim is vital. The Thompson pool will replace the Norplex, which was shut down for good in 2019. Lyle Safronetz at the City of Thompson has fond memories of the old pool.
I had a long history in the Norplex pool. I took my swimming lessons there. I was a competitive swimmer there. I was a lifeguard there. I was an instructor there throughout my entire career. So the pool and the continuation of the pool here will be, again, critical. We talked about low-cost recreational opportunities for youth in the region. That's big.
Flin Flon's community pool will be smaller, but it is closer to opening. The first splash there is expected later this year. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if anyone's going to be dipping in the pool today. Certainly not an outdoor pool, not yet. But we're getting there in the south. Very cold to the north. Time for your regional forecast on CBC with Abby.
Yeah, no pool day for now. It's still crispy outside, so you want to take it easy. Though we're going to see some sunny conditions in the southern parts of the province, but those biting extreme cold still hold in parts of the northern half of the province this morning. Hence that yellow cold warning we have in effect for regions around Boucher. Tracking it towards Tudor Lake this morning. We're tracking dangerously cold wind chills near -50 this morning, with similar conditions expected to return. You might get a bit of reprieve during the day, but then it's going to return in the evening period. Now, in these regions, frostbite on exposed skin in minutes. So take it easy. Now, while the south is clear of formal warnings, we're still seeing wind chills close to -26, 27 in some areas, so you're still going to feel the cold smash in your face. For Winnipeg right now, -17, -16s, we're tracking cloudy conditions, some breezy south winds. Expect the sun to make its appearance. We're already tracking it on the side of some buildings downtown. It's going to be a sunny start this morning before some clouds will roll in by the afternoon period, bringing a slim chance of light snow, and we warm up to a high of -4. But before we get to that -4, temperatures will be hovering around -10 before we get to a high of -4. Now, across the southern regions, -12 to -20s, we're tracking from the Pembina Valley region through the Westman and Interlake region. Expect sunny starts followed by some clouds and a good chance of afternoon flurries. While in the northern part of the province, we're looking at those deep freeze still locked in. Temperatures ranging from -14 in the Par to that bone chill in -38 in Tudula Lake this morning. Thompson Lynn Lake, we're seeing temperatures hover between -29 and -32. Gillam at -33 right now. We're seeing highs would get to -17 in most of the regions, but be prepared for that some breezy winds that's going to keep the wind chill dangerously low between -34 and -41. Now, further north, Churchill, we're seeing ice crystals there, -34 at this time and a high of -25. But the wind chill for Churchill and Tudula Lake, we're looking at it hovering between -45 and -50. So overall, Marissa, it's going to be more like a sunny start for the southern part of the province, expecting some flurries in the afternoon, while the north still remains under those, bone chilling conditions. Winnipeg, -17 at this time.
You know what I love about your forecasts?
Mm-hmm.
You always slide these words in and you say them all with the same tone. Like the wind's going to be smashing your face, you said.
Yeah, you're going to feel it. That's how I felt. When you're stepping out of like a building that's warm in the morning and you just open and go, whoom, I'm like, it smashed in my face.
Yeah, it's throwing you down, man.
I've had a couple runs where I'm just pretty much just getting punched in the face by the wind all the way home. It feels
Nothing gentle about it, right?
No.
All right, that's Corey here for the commute.
Yes, in terms of the drive out there, westbound Abinogi-Mekina, just past St. Anne's, there's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the median lane, so keep right to get around that. That's the only issue I've heard of so far. Might be poor conditions on Highway 391 between Thompson and Lynn Lake this morning, covered and poor visibility, according to Manitoba 511. But if you do see anything else going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you're walking, bike, and driving. I'd love to hear from you. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Corey.
No problem. Thank you.
Nice sky. If you're watching our stream on YouTube and the show live, that shot of downtown is certainly reminding us that it is spring. Just looks really nice this morning and bright. Nothing like that light changing. Well, next on the show is ballet dying. That's what Golden Globe winner Timothée Chalamet has had to say. He said no one cares about it. He was visiting the University of Texas in late February. In case you missed this, he said this during a Variety and CNN town hall.
I admire people, and I've done it myself, to go on a talk show and go, hey, we got to keep movie theaters alive. We got to keep this genre alive. And another part of me feels like if people want to see it like Barbie, like Oppenheimer, they're going to go see it and go out of their way to be loud and proud about it. And I don't want to be working in ballet or opera or, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore. Yeah. All respect to the ballet and opera people out there. I just lost 14 cents in viewership. But
Timothy Chalamet talking about promoting cinema and slamming ballet and opera in the process, trying to save himself after he had his foot in his mouth there. No disrespect. But the comments have drawn criticism on a lot of fronts, as you can imagine. The artistic director of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, Christopher Stoll, has agreed to weigh in this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How is this offensive, upsetting? What was your reaction?
Honestly, I'm neither offended nor upset. I think we have to accept that this has gotten a lot of attention for these two art forms that might not get this much attention usually. So I think we should be grateful for the passion and attention that this moment has brought to us. I want to share that in Winnipeg, this is manifestly not true. We are performing this week, and we've had to open the second balcony of the concert hall because it's selling so well. So Winnipeg definitely cares about ballet, and I think that's a sign of his. We think of ballet and opera as being rarefied, potentially elitist art forms. The reality is, a Hollywood star like him, that is a rarefied perspective. He is not looking at the world realistically.
So you're choosing to look at this as sort of what positive attention it can bring to the art form that obviously in Winnipeg is popular and is something that people love, as cited by how you're selling things out. Do you think that it's also given, though, ballet fans, a moment to galvanize maybe? Like, what's the opportunity in this?
Yes, absolutely. I've loved looking at social media and seeing how much passion is coming through the airwaves about this. How many people are asserting their perspective on this and their commitment to these art forms. People have said really, really smart. There have been really smart responses. I mean, beginning with, he said, I don't want to be part of ballet and opera. Well, no one's asked you to be, and very likely you don't have the talent to have a big professional career in either of those art forms. So we don't need him. We're doing fine, in fact.
That was a bit of a mic drop. I actually I liked that, how you put that. Tell me a little bit more about overall the support for dance culture here in Manitoba and what you're seeing beyond sort of the popularity of the current show, but in terms of the growth and the training of the upcoming dancers and also the season that you're having.
Yes, thank you very much for asking that. So I moved here to Manitoba only last May. So I began this position at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet in June. So everything is new to me, and I am sort of flabbergasted at the interest and pride this community has in the Royal Winnipeg Ballet and how vibrant this cultural scene is. So every time an Uber driver drops me off at our campus, at the RWB campus, they know about the ballet. They're impressed that I work there. And in much larger communities, that connection might not be made. So this is really fertile ground. The Royal Winnipeg Ballet is the oldest continuously running dance organization in all of North America. So I feel incredibly grateful to be part of this organization with this long tradition and history. I feel like we're in a moment where there is extra attention on the organization because of a shift in leadership. And I am sort of seizing that moment and wanting to bring this quality of dance to anybody in all of Manitoba and across Canada, in fact, that is interested. And I want to do it on their terms, not just ours. So one way in which we perform is doing a big classical ballet like the Sleeping Beauty at the concert hall. But for next season, I've initiated some new programs that allow people to see us outdoors, just rehearsing, not a performance. This is how a professional ballet dancer trains, in more intimate spaces where you get to see the dance up close, and get to meet the artists afterwards. The truth is, live performance is increasingly going to become more special because so much of our world is digital and virtual that seeing a human take risk in front of you. The ballerina can not accomplish the complicated turn. The opera singer can not hit the high note. And that doesn't happen in film, for instance, where they can reshoot it, they can Photoshop it, all sorts of things can happen. This the immediacy of these art forms, I think, is going to be increasingly appealing to people.
It's interesting, the making of something, when you watch the making of something, the practice of something, the earned skill of something changes the appreciation. I think it's even when in my small experience of not being a ballet dancer, but being on location with a show, people are always like, oh, I had no idea so much was going on while you're sort of behind the mic, because you wouldn't wouldn't see any of that. You're not supposed to. How are the dancers feeling about that? The artists feeling about being seen in that way? I know you're talking about maybe taking them to public places, like even True North Square, I think, is one of the diversification plans.
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, I feel like the dancers are all very excited about new developments, working with other artists, more opportunities to perform. We haven't discussed specifically what it will be like to be at True North Square, but a dance career is short. So the opportunity to perform, to present your art and who you are as an artist to audiences, the more of that, the better for all. I mean, I was a professional dancer as well. You want to be in front of audiences with that, the excitement and adrenaline of a performance experience as often as possible, because we train and we rehearse, but there is no definitive version of what we do. We're never going to be perfect. It's one of those crazy art forms that actually no one can perfect, which is why I think there's such a passion for it, both among the dancers, certainly the people who practice it, but also the people that it really that really can relate to it as a piece of theater.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for being with us live on Zoom this morning. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
That's Christopher Stoll. He's the artistic director for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
13 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Thanks for being here. Tuesday, March the 10th, as we're all waiting for spring. Still chilly now. Minus 16 winds are calm in Winnipeg with wind chill this morning. Feels like minus 26, but we'll be at minus 4 in the city by the end of the day. Well, have you been noticing if you're driving out and about these bright lights that can be coming at you? Man, last summer I was driving back to Winnipeg from Gimli and I could barely see. And I kept saying to my sister, I'm like, is it my glasses? I've got progressives. Is that what's going on? And she said, I think it might be the new headlights. We're going to hear from an expert about who says that Canada actually needs stronger regulations to prevent glare-related distracted driving. Bright car headlights are an annoyance for many, but are they dangerous when you look at the latest tech that's actually in the headlights? So we're going to hear more about that. That's coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. So lots of high interest, I think, just because a lot of us have had that experience. So what is it about these lights? Next on the show, let's build on a story that you might have heard in the news this morning about a Manitoba family. Marion Penner is a member of that family, and she says she's ready to die.
Yeah, what's the point just to exist because of painkillers? And you spend your days sitting in bed doing nothing, wondering why am I still here?
That's Marion. She's 94 years old. She fell down in December. She broke her pelvis, and now she's bedridden in the Steinbach Hospital. She's on a constant IV drip of painkillers. Now, a doctor diagnosed her condition, which includes heart and kidney disease, as incurable and serious. And her daughter, Valerie Penner, left her Minnesota home to travel here and help Marion navigate Medical Assistance in Dying Program, or Maid, as per Marion's wishes. But Marion was denied. And as you may have heard in our news this morning, Marion is just one person that was denied. But in Manitoba, many people are being denied medical assistance in dying. In fact, at 5 times the national average, according to a federal report. But let's start with learning more about Marion, because her daughter, Valerie, is here in studio to tell us more about navigating this system with her mom. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I just, first of all, what's this been like for your mom going through this?
This has been a huge life change for her. She had a fall, which is not uncommon in the elderly population. She's never really had a major one before, and ended up in the hospital, and they said everything was going to be okay, except then she ended up with a pelvic bleed also. And so they told us, you've got 2 to 12 hours. And so the family, my kids from all over rushed in, of course, to say their loving goodbyes to their Nana, who they love more than anything. And she lingered, which in some ways you'd say is great. but it's not really what she wants. And we as a family had kind of prepared that the doctor's suggestion would be okay, and I don't blame them for having a misplaced suggestion. But then when the decision as a family, and we had talked about it many, many, many times, she asked me to whether I would do the application, and I did the application after trying and trying and trying to get through. Then a couple of days later was told, no, she's not sick enough. She has heart disease. She has kidney disease. She's had strokes before, but we were told, no, each one of those isn't like a little, as in and of itself won't be terminal yet, but she's 94.
Yeah.
They're all, if you put them all in the same kind of cup, you've got her death toll, and she wasn't accepted.
So when your mother, and we heard her there saying, why am I still here? What's the point? Questioning things like that. Your family's gone through this process of, talking about this, coming to this decision, filling out the application, coming to terms with, what your mother's wishes are. How did your mother take the news that when she was denied? How did you even break that to her? Or did the doctor do that?
My mother is I call her Marian, meek and mild, because she's so gentle. I've never heard my mother get upset in my life. That's not an over-exaggeration. It's the way she is. And so it was just kind of like, oh, now what?
And so what's the answer to that? The now what? Will you be seeking a second opinion? Or how are you as a family, and how is she processing this then?
Well, my mother doesn't fight. One of the things I've always wanted her to fight, but now she's kind of just, she's been paneled, so she has to go to a nursing home. She can't be managed at home with home care. So it means that she could also be very, very far away from her home community in that whole process until a bed becomes available in our community. So it's kind of like, here I am in the hospital. I just have to wait.
So there's layers of things here.
There's layers and layers. And she's not a mentally ill woman. This is my field. And she is not what you would consider depressive or any of those kinds of things.
So when a doctor says that, that what she has is incurable and serious, you go through the process, then you're denied Maid. What went through your head when you heard that this wouldn't happen for her?
It was, the end isn't quite in sight yet. And how after 94 years, how disappointing that might be when you don't want to spend whatever year left in a nursing home far away from your family. So it kind of becomes, I can't die, and I can't live properly either. I can't live in community. I can't live with my family and my friends of many, many, many years around me. I have to go somewhere. So right now the hospital is being kind about it by just kind of letting her stay where she is. But I know that that's not always the reality either.
When you hear, and you heard me cite, I'm just going to grab some of the stats so I have them correct here, but when you hear, that Manitobans are denied Maid at 5 times the national average, that there's something happening in this province that is different, what goes through your mind?
I think it's I'm guessing, okay, I don't know for fact, that it's a moral discussion as versus what is actually physically happening for her. I've also heard statistics that men are approved easier than women, at least across Canada. I was shocked when I was told those statistics, but I felt powerless. I'm sure my mom felt powerless. You don't know what to do.
Here is what those statistics are in some details. So the province's 32% denial rate in 2024, the data CBC has, was, as I said, more than 5 times the national average of 6%, according to the federal report on Maid. That was published in November. Now, we did talk to the health minister. We reached out to Zoma Seguera's office. It suggested that 2024 numbers could be an anomaly, but in our reporting, it wasn't just 1 year, and it is still unclear why this is happening. As you said, we can't confirm this as a moral, issue, but to the thinking around the moral issues that might prevent Maid from happening.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about that? Like when you're thinking in the context of your mom trying to make her own decision for her life, and then a societal moral value that might be put on something.
I think they should be they should be separate. It should be an individual's choice, and the systems should be there, hopefully, to facilitate an individual's choice if mental illness is not the compounding factor, which it's not here. I can see that mental health will be a concomitant factor in the future if she's lying in bed for a year away from community. The statistics, the international statistics say that isolation and and loneliness are the largest mental health issues in nursing homes, and that they can't just be corrected by a pill, or they can't be corrected by, oh, we'll have this activity or that activity. She's bedbound. So it just kind of leaves you with no solutions as a family.
What's it going to be like, Valerie, for you to go back to Minnesota?
Well, I'm here until I can't be, and because also as a dual citizen, I have to look at, I can't be here for longer than 6 months. I go back to the States occasionally for a weekend or something like that, but I don't know.
You're juggling that.
And I'm the only child left. I have a disabled brother, but it's me and him.
How do you think overall Manitoba, you've somewhat spoken to this already, but I don't want to miss in case you have something to add. How do you think Manitoba can improve the Maid system?
That's going to be hard. I think they have to look at other systems that are using it more effectively and compare the notes as to what is happening here as versus what is happening in BC or Ontario or Quebec. Is it simply a matter of
the why?
The why. I don't.
The why we're different here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why are we different? Like, I didn't know that when we applied. That oh yeah, there was going to be a good chance that we were going to be denied.
I'm sorry for what's been going on with your family, but thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Sharing her family's story, Valerie Penner in CBC Studio this morning, the daughter of Marion Penner, a 94-year-old Steinbach woman who says she's been denied, who has been denied medical assistance and dying. If you want to read more about this, cbc.ca/Manitoba, Christopher Garrow's story has some more details about those statistics that we were citing. Right now, I just want to mention that also coming up after 8 o'clock on our program, we're going to be talking, as I mentioned, about that Headlight story. If oncoming headlights seem to blind or distract you or just annoy you, you aren't alone. We're going to hear from an expert about why they say that Canada needs stronger regulations to prevent glare-related distracted driving, given the new tech. Right now, Heather Wells with headlines.
Well, the conflict in Iran is driving up the cost of fertilizer for Manitoba farmers. Shipments of nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur, key ingredients for fertilizer, are not getting through the Strait of Hormuz. Stuart Persson is the national leader of crop services at MNP, and he says fertilizer and fuel prices are under significant pressure. He predicts a tough year for producers. We'll hear more Manitoba News coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. In the drive this morning, you want to check 511 if you're traveling highways up north. In the forecast, it's -16. We're going to have sunshine in Winnipeg. That's Winnipeg's temperature right now. Our high is going to be -4. We do have a yellow level cold warnings continuing for Brochet and Dooley Lake. And there may still be an issue, Abinogi-Mi'kmaq just past St. Anne in the median lane, westbound.
Today
today on Q.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. Ira Parker started out making student films in his dad's warehouse in St. Catharines, Ontario. Now he's leading the charge in the hit Game of Thrones prequel, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. He'll talk about his journey to Hollywood and then some.
You just want to make it as good as you can possibly do.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Is there someone in your life who is a constant hassle, someone who stresses you out? Researchers who study hasslers say there are a lot of them, and having a lot of them in your life can actually make you age faster. How to deal with a hassler, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Ithil Musa. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has a warning for Iran.
Today will be, yet again, our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever.
Hegseth says U.S. President Donald Trump has his hand on the throttle of this war, and he is determined to ensure that Iran never possesses a nuclear weapon. Hegseth also says Iran is desperate.
The last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet.
Hegseth is accusing the regime of firing missiles from schools and hospitals. He didn't provide any evidence to back up that claim. He also called Iranian strikes on its regional neighbors a big mistake. Meanwhile, there has been a barrage of Iranian missiles overnight, and countries in the Persian Gulf are reducing their oil output. Iran is vowing it will not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region. The CBC's Megan Williams has the latest from Dubai.
Across the region, air defense systems were active overnight and into the morning. In Iraq, eyewitness videos circulating on social media showed dark smoke and flames rising near the UAE consulate in Erbil late last night. Kurdish counterterrorism authorities say 3 drones were intercepted in the area, with debris from one falling close to the consulate compound. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry says it intercepted and destroyed a ballistic missile and 2 drones earlier this morning. Kuwait's armed forces are also on high alert, with officials there saying their air defense systems shot down 2 ballistic missiles and a drone. The Gulf has come under sustained attack since the United States and Israel struck Iran on February 28th. In the days since, more than 2,000 Iranian missiles and drones have been launched towards Gulf countries. The United Arab Emirates has been the most heavily targeted state in the region, accounting for more than half the attacks. One of the most recent strikes hit Bahrain's oil refinery yesterday, injuring 32 people and forcing the state oil company to declare force majeure. At the same time, tensions among the Gulf countries are rising. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar had all spent years trying to ease tensions with Iran. But after coming under attack themselves, confidence in those diplomatic efforts has mostly evaporated. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
Oil prices have dropped slightly, and markets began to rebound last night after Trump announced the war in Iran could be ending soon. But Americans are still feeling pain at the pumps. Steve Futterman reports.
As most oil shipments have come to a standstill in the Strait of Hormuz, the impact is being felt.
Prices are off the hook right now.
Here in California, which already has some of the highest gas prices in the U.S., drivers can hardly believe what they are seeing at the pump.
Oh, yeah, we noticed it. They went up like $1, in the last week or so.
Some are trying to adjust.
I'm trying to drive less.
This teenage student filling up his car yesterday saw a huge spike.
I usually have to spend around $40 every week, and now it's around $60.
President Trump and the administration have tried to tap dance around the price surge, knowing very well that the political cost could be significant in this fall's elections. Last week, Trump said if they rise, they rise. Yesterday, he said this.
I knew oil prices would go up if I did this, and they've gone up probably less than I thought they'd go up.
This woman says there is not much she can do.
I don't pay attention to them because I need gas. I just pay whatever it costs.
This man wasn't paying attention until we asked him to look.
So what are you paying here today?
That's a great, 5.24. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm a little upset about that.
He blames Trump, accusing the administration of not taking gas prices into consideration until after the attacks on Iran.
With the current administration, you can't predict anything.
And oil analysts say if the war continues, so likely will the rise in gas prices. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Authorities in New Mexico say state investigators have begun searching a ranch formerly owned by Jeffrey Epstein. There are allegations the property may have been used for sexual abuse and the trafficking of young women. Before her death, Virginia Giuffre said she was sexually abused there. Sky Roberts is her brother.
Virginia was one of the most prominent and outspoken survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other perpetrators out there that are still walking free today.
Epstein never faced charges in New Mexico, but state prosecutors say there were revelations in previously sealed files that warrant closer examination. The family of a 12-year-old girl who was critically injured in the Tumbler Ridge attack is suing OpenAI. The civil claim alleges the shooter used ChatGPT to plan the attack. 18-year-old Jessie Van Roetseler killed 8 people. Then she took her own life. The lawsuit claims company staff recognized warning signs but failed to alert police. OpenAI has 30 days to respond. TikTok will be allowed to maintain its physical presence in Canada. It has reached an agreement with the federal government, one that sets guardrails to protect Canadians' data and allow regulatory oversight. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, the government cited serious national security concerns when it ordered TikTok to close its Canadian operations back in 2024. What's changed?
Back in January, the federal court set aside that shutdown order. The very next day, U.S. regulators announced a deal with TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to put its U.S. operations under the ownership and control of an American board. Now we know what the deal's going to be to continue its business in Canada. Last night's statement from Industry Minister Melanie Joly says that TikTok has agreed to enhance the protection of personal data with new security barriers. Remember, an app like this has access to all sorts of personal data on smartphones. The fear was that because TikTok was Chinese-owned, it could ultimately be compelled to hand over data from Canadian mobile devices under orders from the Chinese Communist Party. The new privacy-enhancing technologies that TikTok's committing to here will apparently reduce the risk of that kind of unauthorized access to Canadian data. The minister said that a third-party monitor will be appointed to audit and verify the integrity of these new controls. And as the Carney government considers implementing a social media ban for young people, it's notable that this deal also includes enhanced protections for minors, something that Canada's Privacy Commissioner had recommended.
But there is still a ban on government devices, right?
Yeah, the minister's statement last night was silent on that. While this app was never banned for individual Canadians to use, it's possible that when it comes to the security of government data, the bar might be higher. It's also worth noting that Canada's diplomatic dialogue with China has improved considerably compared to when Canada first launched its national security review 3 years ago.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Members of the Canadian military are in Cambridge, Nunavut, conducting Operation Nanook. As Saloni Bugra reports, this year it comes as Canada looks to invest heavily in Arctic security.
On a regular winter day, Cambridge Bay, a remote hamlet of about 1,200 people in the north of Nunavut, is peaceful. For the past few weeks, though, residents are hearing snowmobiles hauling military equipment and Air Force drills overhead.
It's scary.
Emily Ngulalek is an Inuit elder and the executive director of the local cultural center.
I'm grateful that they're here to protect, and at the same time, I'm fearful. Are we that close to the war?
It's the first time the Canadian Armed Forces have taken Operation Nanook to Cambridge Bay in winter since 2007. It all coincides with Canada ramping up defense investments in the Arctic due to geopolitical changes, like China's growing ambition in the Arctic, the push to develop critical minerals in the north, and U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to Greenland and Canada's sovereignty. Wayne Gregory is the mayor of the hamlet.
A lot of the community members feel a little
anxiety with a lot of the talks because we are the main hub and we're the center of the Northwest Passage.
Sean French is the Joint Forces Commander for Operation Nanook.
The Armed Forces is putting increased effort into making sure that Canada's Arctic and our northern people are safe, secure.
Last week in Ottawa, Canada urged NATO to pivot its policy to the Arctic. Gregory said he hopes Ottawa's planned spending will offset some of the residents' concerns.
Paved runway, hangars.
Saloni Pugra, CBC News, Cambridge Bay.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm RC Marcusa. You have been with us, hopefully. And if you're just joining us, welcome to Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and YouTube. We'll have your forecast in just a moment for this Tuesday, March the 10th. Looking not bad today. Kind of a return to seasonal norms, although the wind chill's going to spoil the party a little. And up north, very, very cold. Not as slick as yesterday, though, so that's a bit of a bright on our morning commute. This half hour on the show, if you have been commuting, you might have noticed headlights that seem to be blinding. Or it's maybe just something that's annoying. At best, it's annoying. At worst, it's distracting or it's dangerous. We're going to talk about those headlights this half hour. An expert on why Canada needs stronger regulations to prevent glare-related distracted driving. We're going to look at these new headlights, what's going on out there, and it's maybe something that's happened to you. I know I've been behind the wheel and kind of gone, is it just me or is something strange coming at me? All right, let's go to Heather Wells. She has developments and other stories this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitobans are far more likely to be denied medical assistance in dying or Maid than people in any other province. Marion Penner broke her pelvis in a fall in December, leaving her bedridden. The Steinbach woman spent her 94th birthday in hospital and is waiting for palliative care with no prospect of her condition improving. Penner applied for Maid but was told she didn't qualify well before the minimum required assessment time. So we'll hear more of her story coming up. And the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is increasing the cost of fertilizer, the conflict blocking the Strait of Hormuz, so exports like nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur aren't getting through. We're going to hear from a Poplar Point farmer who says the longer the supply chain is disrupted, the greater the risk for farmers. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby, tell us more about the forecast.
Yeah, Marcy, the sun is already up in most of the regions. We saw a sunrise at 7:53 this morning, and more daylight sunset would be about 7:25 later in the evening. So if you want to be out and about, there you go. You get more daylight. Still crisp morning. The knot still locked in. That's really deep freeze. Yellow warnings in place affecting Brochet towards Tudula Lake this morning. We're talking about wind chills in the values of minus 45 to minus 50. Now, similar conditions will return tonight. You might get a break in between sometime this afternoon, but those wind chills will return tonight. So frostbite and exposed skin in a minute. For Winnipeg, we're hovering around minus 17 at this time. A few clouds at sunrise. Expected sunny conditions to stay with us for a bit before we see a mix of sun and clouds moving late this afternoon, bringing a slim chance of light snow. Seasonal high for this time of the year is supposed to be around minus 2, but we get to minus 4 today, and that's the similar conditions we're going to see in most of the regions down south. We'll see temperatures trying to recover nicely to those seasonal highs near minus 6 and minus 3 for the south, but up north, the story is different. Actual temperature in Tudula Lake right now is minus 37.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into the commute with Corey.
Yeah, so far, no major issues. There was an issue earlier on westbound Abinogi-Mikana, just after St. Anne's, that is now clear, so should be smooth sailing through there. Other than that, though, if you do see something going on, if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Time right now is 8:14, and we've been talking about this all morning. It's likely happened to you, or maybe not. It's happened to me. Vehicle headlights coming towards you or behind you. They're so bright, they're distracting. More than annoying, though, the bright lights can be dangerous. So why are we talking about this today? Well, nearly 1,500 Canadians have now signed a House of Commons petition to, quote, modernize the federal regulations governing motor vehicle headlights. 174 Manitobans have signed this so far. So what should be done to prevent drivers from being blinded by the lights? It's a question CBC Jim Agapito asked Winnipeggers.
My name is Aaron Adaricio.
Vancouver City Council is asking the federal government to do something about the brightness of car headlights. What have you noticed?
I drive a pretty short Subaru Impreza, so I'm at eye level with every big truck. So all their headlights are directly in my eyes the whole time, and they're pretty bright pretty often.
Colleen Silk. I find it a big problem at night with some cars. Just the brightness and the glare, and I find it very distracting when I'm driving.
I'm Zach Domenico. I feel like I've noticed a lot of people kind of with their brights on when they're driving. It's a little bit annoying, I guess.
How often do you see a car with excessively bright headlights?
Pretty much once a day, I think, at least.
And how do you deal with that?
I just kind of suffer through it.
Every time I'm out at night.
It's not often, but definitely when you're driving, you'll definitely notice a couple people maybe with their brights on or something like that, yeah.
What do you think should be done about this?
Any kind of restriction about the brightness, the explicit brightness of headlights would be helpful. Some kind of regulation or standard ceiling of brightness.
That I don't know. Way above my pay grade.
People should just be, maybe a bit more aware when they're getting in their car, make sure their lights are on in the first place and make sure they're not on their bright setting.
You have bright headlights?
Definitely not. One of them's also burnt out, so that doesn't help.
Do you think your car has bright headlights?
Yes, it does. It does, yes, for sure.
And how do you think other than drivers react to it? Is it much like how you're feeling?
Yeah, well, my bright lights, there's a setting for them. So obviously when I'm a lot of cars around and whatnot, obviously I turn them down, try to be respectful of all the other people around. So yeah.
Do you think bright headlights make roads safer?
There's obviously a benefit to bright headlights, but you have high beams for that, and if you don't need your high beams, then what's the point of the high beams? Your basic headlights don't need to be also doing that.
Do you think bright headlights make roads safer?
No, I mean, there's a happy medium somewhere between headlights that aren't bright enough for the driver to see and headlights that are bright enough that they distract other drivers.
I would think from your own perspective, yes, but from the perspective of somebody else, no, just because they might not be able to see where they're going.
That's the CBC's Jim Agapito speaking to Winnipeggers about headlight brightness. Now, to weigh in next, we have vehicle lighting researcher Daniel Stern with us via Zoom. He's the chief editor of Driving Vision News. It's a technical journal for the vehicle lighting industry, and we've reached him via Zoom. He's in Vancouver. Hello to you.
Good morning.
So I just want to clarify something to start, because I heard a lot of people saying when you put on your brights. Back in the day, we had, regular headlights, then you'd make them brighter. Are we talking about turning on your brights, or are we talking about, in some cases, just some change in regular headlights being brighter than in the past?
Well, yeah, when I was listening to the people commenting, I think a lot of the time when people say, oh, that car has its brights on, probably they actually have their low beams on, not their high beams. Low beams have been, over the years, they've been growing wider and brighter and bluer. And the lights themselves have been growing smaller and smaller and smaller. And all of those things make them a lot more glaring.
And where is the glare affecting people the worst? Is it when you're coming on a 2-lane coming at someone or behind you, or does it make a difference?
It's both. Because the other thing is, we've got in the past, decades ago, most of us just drove sort of sedans, maybe a few minivans. Now you have a mix of low cars, Honda Civics and that sort of thing, and great big trucks and SUVs. And trucks have been growing larger and larger. So you have a lot more difference between high-mounted headlamps and low-mounted headlamps. Low-mounted mirrors and low driver eye positions. So it's much more possible these days that if you're in a low car, you can get an SUV behind you or a pickup truck coming at you, and your eyes or your mirrors are right at its headlamp height, and you're really going to get zapped very hard.
Now, the solution, the workaround has been that you press your mirror and it kind of comes down and it gives you a little bit of it helps you, right? It shields it a little bit for you. But that doesn't seem to work as consistently anymore. Is it because of that eye line you're talking about?
Yeah, there's really only so much that those anti-glare mirrors can do. They can reduce the amount of glare, but if you're starting with a giant whack load more glare than you used to, even the reduced amount can still be distracting. Plus, it doesn't do anything for your outside mirrors, which can zap you. And so you wind up shifting those out of position, and that creates a danger because now you can't see what's around you. You can't use the mirrors for what they're for.
What else stood out from you when you heard those drivers from Winnipeg talking about lights? And also, when you hear from other drivers about the brightness of headlights right now?
Well, those Winnipeg drivers mentioned one word again and again. It was distraction. I think that's a really important point. We know that distracted driving is unsafe. That's why we punish people. If a police officer sees you fiddling with your phone, even if you don't cause a crash, you're going to get a ticket because we know that distraction is unsafe. But apparently, that's only if the distraction is voluntary. If it's involuntary, if it's coming from headlight glare that you can't do anything about, I guess you're on your own. We aren't doing much about that.
What's the impact on a driver's? You've alluded to safety and distraction, but what's the impact on vision?
Well, that's a really important point because there are two kinds of glare. There's discomfort glare and disability glare, and they do pretty much what their names say. Discomfort glare is the kind that makes us go, ow, get those lights out of my eyes. And disability glare is the kind that objectively reduces our ability to see. And it sounds like, well, only up to a certain intensity, it's only discomfort glare, and then above this threshold, it's disability glare. But that's not actually how it works. Any amount of light, if you're even a little bit dark adapted, so if you're driving in something other than full sunlight, if you're driving after dark, any amount of light in your field of vision is going to degrade your vision a little bit, even the dashboard lights. But nobody goes, ow, hey, get my dashboard lights out of my eyes, they hurt. So you can have a lot of discomfort glare with no disability glare, and vice versa. But that's small comfort to drivers who are in the middle of piloting a couple of tons of steel at 100 kilometers an hour, and they feel like they're blinded. So it doesn't really matter if you could have a researcher with a bunch of instruments sitting next to them in the car and saying, oh no, my instruments show that you can actually see okay. If you're driving and you feel like you can't see, that's more than distraction. That's verging on panic, and maybe it's verging on rage. And we know that neither of those things is safe. So one way or another, we get from glare to a traffic safety problem.
What role do aftermarket lights play, the customized lights that an owner can have specifically installed in the glare problem? Because we started by saying that sometimes it's actually low beams that are on. Are those lights that are aftermarket, or are those just sort of new tech that's in more new vehicles?
Well, it's both. That's a really important point. LED bulbs are all over the place. You can walk into a Canadian Tire or any other parts store. You can go online and very easily buy them. And people do because, they think, well, I had a great experience putting LED bulbs in my dining room, in my garage, whatever. The problem is that in your dining room or your garage, all your light sources have to do is light up in a way that you find adequate and pleasant. That's all they have to do. Headlamps are optical instruments. So if you put in a kind of light source other than what they were designed for, so like an LED bulb instead of a halogen bulb, that's like putting on somebody else's eyeglasses. They might look great on your face, but the optics don't match. So you're going to turn your halogen headlamps into unsafe glare monsters, and you might feel like they're way brighter, and in a way they are, but it's a lose-lose deal because your light isn't being distributed the way it needs to be for you to see safely, and you're causing severe glare to other drivers. So that's the aftermarket side. On the original equipment side, as I said, low beams are getting wider and wider in terms of how the light is distributed. And they're getting brighter and brighter. And one thing that we don't do very well in this country is keep track of our headlight aim. Light aim is the number one determinant of not only how well you can see after dark with your headlights, but how much glare you're throwing around. And it's really, really hard to find a shop that is equipped, willing, and able to aim headlamps properly. You get them sort of shining them on the wall and twiddling with the adjuster screws. No, it's a precision operation that requires proper equipment operated properly. And in my travels across Canada, I have found really very few shops that can or will do the job properly. Many years ago, it used to be that this was, was a routine thing. Every year or two, you had to take your car in. One of the things that got inspected and adjusted properly was headlight aim. In most of Canada, that has fallen away, which is really a problem because today's headlamps are a lot more sensitive to misaim in terms of how much glare they produce.
So how are other countries regulating this issue, and how does that compare to what Transport Canada has in place when it comes to brightness of headlamps?
Yeah, most of the world uses United Nations vehicle safety regulations, which in terms of headlamps are a lot more stringent regarding low beam glare. Everything from the beam pattern to there's a requirement that vehicles with high intensity headlamps have automatic leveling. So if you throw some weight in the trunk, the headlamps are automatically shifted down a little bit so they don't glare. They throughout Europe and a lot of other countries, they do have the periodic aim inspection and adjustment. We don't do any of that here because we're sort of handcuffed to the United States regulations, which utterly don't care about low beam glare.
Got it.
In the U.S. reg and in the Canadian reg, low beam glare isn't actually even mentioned.
So, Daniel, we have a question actually that just came in while we're talking. So I'm going to play it for you live. We'll see if we can answer it here. I hope that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, it's about headlights.
Hi, my name's Heather. Listening to the comments about headlights, and I just want to comment that there was a time when you could position your headlights so that they were pointed more downward as opposed to straight ahead, which would add to the discomfort rate of oncoming traffic. Is that still done, like with newer vehicles? That's just my comment on my question. Bye.
So you've obviously just spoken to that, Daniel, that aiming of headlights. That's what you were talking about. But I think my question out of that call, because obviously this is someone saying, hey, they used to do this, remembering this. Are you optimistic that anything's going to change in Canada around either the aim or the requirements? We heard there's petitions. City of Vancouver passed a motion to push the feds to officially address headlight glare. Are you optimistic anything's going to change?
Well, yes and no. On the one hand, Transport Canada is doing a fair amount of research on the subject. They're due to present some research findings next month at a safety vehicle conference in Toronto. So they are, they're not just ignoring the issue. And as you mentioned, Vancouver City Council and actually also Victoria City Council put forth these resolutions, which is very unusual for a city council to get involved with something like headlight glare. But really, I think that and the House of Commons petition, that all speaks to sort of growing political will to do something about it. And I think of glare kind of like air pollution. It's a social ill, but nothing gets done about it until the political will develops to do something about it.
To
when
change
the public
it.
Public stands up and says, enough, we're not having this.
Yeah.
That's when something changes. On the other hand, the tie to the U.S. regs is very strong. Nothing's going to change in the U.S. And on the other hand, Canada already permits the UN headlamps. And, so maybe as the U.S. continues pushing this country away, maybe we'll see a pivot to the international vehicle specifications.
And the standards
I would like to
there.
see that.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Daniel Stern, live on CBC, chief editor of Driving Vision News, a technical journal for vehicle lighting industry. We did reach out, by the way, to Transport Canada on the issue. They said they're currently analyzing a 2025 study on headlight glare and will release the results in May. And we can't resist. So here's The Weekend on CBC 89.3 FM.
Just a touch, baby. I look around.
You know this is called Blinding Lights by The Weekend. Like I said, we couldn't resist on that interview. While we were talking traffic, actually, there, Hannah called. So let me pass this along as we head into the news. On the commuter line, she said traffic on the southbound perimeter between Gunn Road and Dugald Road is at a standstill, and she wasn't sure why. Coming up, your CBC News from Manitoba. Your news from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is minus 15. A cold start, but we warm up to minus 4 today, and that is very close to the seasonal high of minus 2 for this time of year. A 96-year-old Steinbach woman has been told she's too healthy for an assisted death.
You spend your days sitting in bed doing nothing, wondering why am I still here.
Marion Penner is bedridden in hospital with chronic diseases and a broken pelvis. She's not the only one who has applied for Maid but's been denied. According to November's annual federal report on Maid, Manitoba has by far the highest ratio of denied Maid requests in Canada at 32%. That's well above the national average of about 6%. Penner says she doesn't want palliative care, and now she and her daughter Valerie are looking for a better explanation.
She's going to die in the next while. It feels like the system just wants to kind of warehouse you until you do so that you don't have to really touch or affect Maid numbers.
Chronic conditions like Penner's became an eligible qualification for Maid in 2021. Shared Health says it cannot comment on specific cases, but it says it has safeguards in place to protect vulnerable patients, and a doctor is supposed to clearly explain every denial. Well, the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is increasing the cost of fertilizer. The conflict is blocking the Strait of Hormuz, so key exports like nitrogen, phosphate, and sulfur aren't getting through. Poplar Point farmer Carl Stewart says he's fortunate because he ordered his fertilizer before prices spiked. But he says the longer the supply chain is disrupted, the greater risks for farmers. Stewart says it shows Canada needs to beef up its infrastructure to better deal with global emergencies.
We need to be a little bit more forward thinking so that when things get back to normal, that they try and stay as consistent as possible, because this affects every single person in Canada, not just us farmers.
Fertilizer Canada tells CBC in a statement farmers should consult with local retailers to stay up to date on fertilizer supply. Well, to Iran now, and the capital, Tehran, is being hit hard as Israel launches a new wave of attacks. The Iranian Red Crescent Society releasing video this morning showing people being rescued from bombed buildings in Tehran. U.S. President Donald Trump says the war will end soon, but the fighting appears to be ramping up, and so is the rhetoric. In an update this past hour, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says Iran is isolated and losing, and he says this is where the battle stands.
Today will be, yet again, our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing.
Iran is also launching verbal salvos, with top security officials warning U.S. President Donald Trump to be careful not to get eliminated himself. You can stay in step with the conflict in Iran by heading to cbcnews.ca. A pair of northern Manitoba communities are well on their way to having new indoor pools. Both Thompson and Flin Flon are working on the new projects. Flin Flon's pool is almost finished, while Thompson's is still under construction. Both communities are surrounded by lakes and water, so learning to swim is vital. Flin Flon Recreation Director Caitlin Bailey says the pools will help with public safety.
Having a location where not only children, adults, newcomers can hone their skills when it comes to swimming before they're out on a boat, before they're at the beach, things like that. It's really important to be able to have access to that.
Both communities did have pools in the past, but both of those pools shut down several years ago. And since then, the only town in the region with its own community pool is The Paw. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, the guys are laughing at me in the control room because I was doing a traffic tip and I lost my voice because of my cold. And they said
I heard that.
They said it sounded like I was crying, like over what was said on the commuter line. Like I was so sad about what was going on around Dugald Road.
You know what? It's a very serious thing, traffic.
It is, but I was not crying, I promise. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to repeat what's going on there in a moment. Corey's in with our last look at traffic. Speaking of thank yous, though, I do want to thank Heather Wells and Joni Nicolo and Megan Ketchison, as well as Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. That's our news department, and our last two are our producers. Also, our live team, Abby Adiyemi, Darren Marash, and Corey Funk. And those who worked in the program today, we had Sophia Peralta-Barone and Jim Agapito. And let's have a last look at the commute now with Corey.
Yeah, I just got a call from Lindsay. She says that back up on southbound perimeter, there was a train that was going through. That's why. But that train is now gone. So hopefully it should be clearing up pretty soon here, if not clear already.
All right. And Abby?
Yeah, it's dangerously cold up north. We're still tracking wind chills in the valleys of -45 to -50 around Churchill and Tudula Lake this morning. But down south, temperatures will hover between -12 and -20. Clear, sunny skies. We'll see near seasonal highs of -3. Winnipeg, -17 at the airport. We get close to -3 today also.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Dylan Longhurst for his work on today's program, and our Steinbach reporter who's working out of Winnipeg right now, Christopher Garrow, for his work on one of the stories in the show today. Thanks to all of our guests that appeared and shared stories with all of us. We all learn from each other. And if you do have a story to share, remember, we're just a call away. The listener line 788-3205. You can also email us at radio893@cbc.ca. And if you have something to pass along that's confidential, just let us know as well. Maybe it's something we can look into as your public broadcaster. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC, and The Current's coming up next. Stay on 89.3 FM. Enjoy the sun, Winnipeg, and bundle up north. Hopefully that's going to break today, and you'll have a more mild day tomorrow. And we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the show. This has been Information Radio. Thanks for listening.